It is hold on, I'll correct myself. It is 2:02 p.m. and the meeting is called to order. It appears we have all of our trustees present, which includes our treasurer. The director is here, the chief admin officer is here. I don't know what time or if council is going to be joining us today. And we have our communications and marketing manager, and we have a quorum. So we'll start now with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm moving a speck more slowly than usual because I sneezed one day recently and my back went a little wacky, but or it could just be I'm an old man now, so I don't know which it is. Okay, typically we go next with public comment, and I have the list here, and we did not have anyone sign up. Does anyone wish to speak that did not sign up? No? Very good. Finish with that. Let's see what we got next. Oh, I have a comment here. I like to have written comments all the time. In support of the Idaho statewide version, last month, the board approved a resolution designating the period from Mother's Day through Father's Day as Traditional Family Values Month. I just wish to emphasize that we are now within that window of time. Happy Traditional Family Values Month, everyone. And so now we next go on to the consent agenda on item number 5. Okay, I assume everyone has had a chance to review it. Does anyone have any changes or suggestions or discussion regarding the minutes from the last meeting? Okay, hearing none and without objection, the minutes are hereby accepted. So now we're going to now move on to agenda item number 6, which is the financial statements. I think typically Trustee Plus likes to get us started on that, but I can't speak for him.
I'll let someone else go if they want.
I'll start then with a very small comment. I was happy to see that generally speaking, we appear to be within our target expenditure and more or less our income area revenue for the month, because we're supposed to be about 58% spent out this period of time. And our numbers look like overall, they come out pretty darn close to that. So thank you for spending the money well and bringing it in as well. I don't think I had any particular concerns at the moment. So I do have one question. It appears we don't have the balance at the very end. I'm not sure I understand. The budget expenses appear to exceed the budgeted revenue, and I didn't know. I thought we had a balanced budget, so I'm not really sure if I'm reading that correctly, but it appears that there's a negative 15,000. And I don't recall what it was. So I don't know if it was a calculation issue or what, but it's been noted.
Just, it reflects the form of the budget that we had last time. We had the $60,000 that was going to be put into CARP. Technically it wasn't a GL code, so it sat there as a way of showing that was gonna happen. So that's what zeroed it out on other different, on the top line, it was the current number. So the 15,000 is just a more accurate reflection of the budget without those non-GL modifications from the original form of the budget. Does that make sense? Like the 60,000 that we put operationally into CARP is not here. So that offsets that upset the zero balance. And then on the top line, the item amount, which also wasn't So the new finance office is doing things more accurately than I did last year, so that's why there's a bit of a difference. It won't actually make an effect in the annual. We strive to zero out the budget projected year end wise, but that's why it reflects that way now. If that makes sense. Oh, yeah, and we can talk more about it during our budget discussion.
More than happy to. Okay, other persons, trustee Foss, please.
Quite a couple of questions. Not that I see anything wrong with this, but 440, line 440 revenue donations. There's been 208 or almost 209,000 brought in. I think most of that was a trust from a couple or something.
A bequeathment, maybe?
Bequeath, yeah,
Think.
okay.
Yes.
Was that designated for a specific, like Pinehurst Library, or? I thought there was some designation of what it would be used for. I'd like to see that noted someplace, what that's for. Maybe it's belongs further down.
Yeah, again, that's gonna come up later in our budget. It is designated. That one is, I think, Hayden Library. Whether we put it on this piece of paper, I think it's,
When we got it, we
Yeah.
that it went to Hayden.
Yeah.
At that time.
at that time, and now it's just sitting there. Like that would have been, in the month it came in the narrative, it would have been mentioned.
I'd like to see it on the balance sheet, I guess, that it's just like.
Yeah, and that, again, like we talked about before, that will be given to the board during this budget cycle. I think it's not part of this agenda item.
Well, I'm saying a regular, just like you're keeping the ICRIM, you're making note of it.
Mhm.
Can we make note of, on the month to month, what
Yes,
funds are allocated?
yes,
But we shouldn't have to wait till the next year's budget to see that.
understood.
Okay. And then if I may, a couple of other. Maybe it's been explained before, but we have twice told tales, used books. Is that embedded in income from CLN Friends, or is there some other line item that's the books, or is it just a general donation?
Twice Told Tales is the Post Falls Friends. So the Twice Told Tales is that store that's contained in the foyer of Post Falls. The CLN Friends is a different organization. They run out of Hayden. The annual book sale that happened at Hayden, last month, the month before, that's operated by the CLN Friends. And then the Post Falls Friends is kind of a carryover when Post Falls was its own branch before it became part of the district. They had that Friends group and they run the bookstore in that branch, and that's where that money comes. They're two separate entities, and so they're separated out on the 460 and 465.
But that's where that money comes from. I
Yes.
guess. Okay. My other question was down on expenditure 610, collections, physicals, there's 15,800. I'm really keen on the replacement of books for CIN that people were borrowing. And I would like to think some of that is that, but is there a way we can get a detail maybe on the other sheet, how much this month was spent on, what maybe it's ICRIM, I don't know, but how much was spent on CIN replacement books?
I can definitely get that. It's not something we're tracking specifically from a budget standpoint. I think when the collection and development manager presented last time, she focused on the fact that there was like 75% on suggestions and requests. And so
Right.
there's a lot of that, which is CIN related. Anyway, bottom line is I can get that breakout, but the collection development manager is not breaking out financially that way. They're gonna be getting those things based on assessing the collection, what was missing, and then it'd probably be easier for me to present that as a own agenda item, at a specific point in time, either end of fiscal year. Or, right now, I can say that no, as you remember, like ICRIM money was meant to subsidize this 255. We haven't spent any of the ICRIM money yet, so this is still running on the regular budget. I know, like in our previous conversations, the idea is to try and specifically put money into the project of, bolstering that 25,000 or so items that are lost to us, as it were. But, so yeah, it's definitely something that I can present. It's not being thought of from a financial standpoint, from the collection development department's perspective, even though they're working on it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I could definitely.
If you could do like a quarterly report or something, but I think that's, should be of great interest to the community, and I think I, for one, as a trustee, want to correct that.
You have any further, trustee Foss? Or I can jump to someone else.
You can go to someone else.
Right. Trustee, no, okay. No, okay, I guess you have it.
One last question, shows 0 on 885 for the district office lease. So I assume that that's accurate, not a cent has been sent for that.
Still in payments.
That is correct.
Okay.
Anything further regarding the financial statements for 2025? Okay. Well, without objection, I'd say we could go ahead and consider that. That objection will accept the financial reports for the period ending April 30th, 2026. Okay, very good. Now move on to the next item on the agenda. Give me a moment to get caught up. See what we got here. I guess next up we have is item number 7 on the agenda, community library net, number 7, the community, Spirit Lake annual report and tour, and it will be Carol Ferguson. Good afternoon.
No.
And this will be both a report of sorts by Carol Ferguson and then a tour of the library.
We can close the door too, make it easy. Stay like this so I can get the. Okay. Welcome to the Spirit Lake Library. I am Carol, the manager of the Spirit Lake Library. This is our 2026 board report. I'm going to talk to you about staff, updates to the library, community partnerships, and the demographics of Spirit Lake, the town. On the far left here, we have Sasha, who does our circulation. She's been here about 2 years. Rain does circulation. She's been here about 3 years. Elena does all our youth programming, and Nicole does all our adult programming. This year, we got updates to our end caps and tops of our shelvings to brighten up the library. And with our community partnerships, every year we do our local 4th of July parade, and we walk in it. And we have STEM night at the Spirit Lake Elementary School, which people from all over the community here come. And we promote the library of things, binders, the STEM. We do activities for the kids, kind of get them excited about the library. We also do farmers market it starts about the end of May to September. And we promote and do the library cards. The demographics of Spirit Lake has a population as of 2025, 2,524. Average household income is 65,192. Has 81% homeowners. We have a new mayor, named Charlene Phipps. She started in January. She'll have a 4-year term. The city has working on drilling a number 6 well. And we still have a moratorium going on building in Spirit Lake, so it's not expanding because we have a moratorium going. They tried to expand in Bonner County with some poo fields, but Bonner County turned them down, so they're back to square one. Do you have any questions about my presentation?
Is there a moratorium on building in general for the city?
What's that?
Is there a moratorium in general?
Yes, it's been for quite a while,
Housing and commercial, both?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You know why? I mean, what was the reason?
For the sewer.
For the sewer?
They can't expand the sewer, yeah. They need to expand, and that was the idea, was to expand in Bonner County, because that's where their poop fields are already. And, they were gonna get access to some federal land, and Bonner County turned it down, so trying to figure it out, so, yeah.
Just wondering, how
Yes, it is.
often are you at the farmer's market?
We try to do about twice a month during the summer time, yeah. Yes, sir.
The farmer's market, what, you just promote getting cards and signing up, or is there
Signing
other
card, we show
activities?
other things that we have. They can access in the library, for example, our STEM binder, which shows everything that's in there, library of things, 3D printer, what they can access.
Do you think it's increased
Library card?
people coming to the library?
Yes, I do.
You can,
Yes,
okay, well, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm all for that.
yes.
And maybe I didn't listen carefully. So since we don't have any more toilets being put in the system, is the population staying the same, or are they just doubling up the people in the houses, or flushing
No,
less, or
it stays about the same.
about the same?
Yeah.
Okay.
I go elsewhere.
Yeah. Were there any other questions for, that was one of our shorter presentations, but it's concise and we're ahead of schedule as it is. Nothing else from the board? Oh, trustee Fox, please.
I don't know if you showed it, but has the door count increased at all, or is it out?
We've gone down a little bit on our door count because we're no longer part of West Bonner. We had quite a few patrons from West Bonner and
You mean CIN?
CIN, yes.
Yeah.
Our count has- yeah.
But since the, I guess that was Apple, so we never experienced any problems during the, or did it go up when Athol was closed, or,
It did go up. yes.
and did it go back down after Athol opened, or?
It does, we have some of the same patrons, but some have gone back,
Okay,
and so that's why we're working on getting more patrons.
so it's kind of hard to grow when the city won't grow.
Yeah.
Okay,
Is that what the mayor was hired on the basis of how well they can improve their sewage system? Okay, I don't know. There must be a big deal.
Yeah.
But if there are other questions or so, we can go on a tour of the library and then we can reconvene in whatever, 10, 15 minutes. Okay, we're on item number 8 on today's agenda, which is discussion of Library Board of Trustee vacancies. Or vacancies singular, I'm sorry. Small thing I'd like to read off first. Then on Tuesday, the director sent an email to all trustee applicants informing them that they should be prepared to address the board and to speak for up to 3 minutes. And then after all applicants have spoken, the board would proceed with nominations and then a brief Q&A with the nominees to follow. I have a question for the board because it's not necessarily resolved. After each of the applicants speak, would the board be okay with the idea of permitting each of the applicants not yet nominated to answer any questions we might have? Do we want to do that or not? Because I think we have five applicants, I believe it is. And so the way it came out was if they were nominated, we can ask more questions, but if you're okay with that, can we go ahead and ask a couple of questions if we need to of everybody before we go into the process of actually nominating people? So just want to know what your thoughts are on that. Yes, trustee Foss.
I thought we didn't ask questions until they were nominated.
Well, that's what was sent out on the email, but it's not required to go that way. We can do whatever we wish with it, really. So I guess I'm just asking, I don't want to make a decision without the board's concurrence.
We can only nominate one
We
person.
can, yes, well, I have that on I have a separate
So
discussion.
why ask questions of all of them if we don't?
Um,
Let them speak for sure. That's what I'm saying.
They all get a chance to speak. My question is, do we want to allow them to answer if we have any additional questions before we go through the nomination process? That's my only question. That could be a yes or no. So
Yeah, we can do
you okay with that? Anybody disagree with that? Okay, good. I don't know if we'll have any follow-up questions.
that.
And we can still ask questions after we narrow it down to actual nominees.
We get to ask more questions.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so, all right, good. Okay, we resolved that. So we can ask one or two more questions of the persons that speak before we actually go through the nomination process. So now I want to explain the process as best I got it all. I wrote it up yesterday. All trustees will be offered an opportunity, all trustees are here, will be offered an opportunity to make only one nomination. So we can't, obviously we have only 4 of us and we have 5 people. We will all have an opportunity to discuss the nominees and ask them any follow-up questions after we nominate somebody. This will be followed by a board vote. And if 3 or more trustees vote in favor of one nominee, then that person will be appointed and then take the oath of office. If we arrive at a tie, we'll then need to deliberate further and vote again. And should we be unable to arrive at a majority decision today, then the possibility exists that there's a possibility of having to schedule a special meeting to continue the appointment process. Everyone okay with that on the board here? Okay, make sure I wasn't thinking the wrong direction. Okay. I threw the names down here, so it's not any special sequence of names or anything. Colin Hubbard is one of the persons that's applying. I don't know, yeah, are we using this microphone here? Just so I know. Okay. And you have whatever, 2-3 minutes to speak and tell us your thoughts and why you wish to be on the board and maybe what you bring to the board. And if people have any questions, we can ask you questions if you don't mind.
Okay.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Colin Hubbard. I'm a local speech language pathologist. I predominantly work with children, but I also work with adults. I got a bachelor's degree from Cal State Fullerton and a master's at University of Louisville in Kentucky. I've been working in special education. I usually work in private practice, but I've experienced working in schools. In my younger years, I also volunteered at a library. One of the first things I did in moving up here too was to make sure I get a library card. And I want to help spread and show the appreciation I have for what a library did for me in my younger years, and also helping me with in undergrad doing a literature review and also doing research during graduate school and help share those and other resources with the community. I was able to also, when I was a caregiver for a young fellow who's younger than me, he and I would often go to the library and we would not only check out books, but I was appreciative of the different kits and the different community things I could take him to. Well,
You know what? Go ahead.
I'm just gonna get you to elaborate a little bit more what you would like to do if you were on the board, and maybe that would go for everybody if they get a chance to say that, kind of like any pet peeves or any motivation of what you would like to accomplish.
I like the reading programs. I want to spread more about that, especially in, the schools in the areas surrounding the libraries. Also helping with, people being aware of, because I think most people just think of libraries, unfortunately, they just think of the books, or maybe sometimes they'll think of the media in terms of the CDs or the audio tapes we were talking about during the tour. I'm going to help spread that and help people know more of what is available in a library. Help people realize that, even though libraries have been around, they're still very relevant.
Okay, I have a question, if you don't mind. Do you live in the, probably should put my microphone back on. Do you live in the CLN district?
Yes, I'm in Post Falls.
Okay, because some people could be living in the city of Coeur d'Alene, which is, they're not part of this
Right.
operation, okay. And, they're not sequenced here at all. How many, board meetings maybe have you attended, would you guess, of the library board?
On the library board, this is the first.
Pardon?
This is the first, but I've been doing other volunteering in the community. I've also been doing some hours at the Post Falls Museum.
Any other questions for people? Yeah, oh, then I'll run through my questions in case there's somebody else in here. Now, do you know how long a person serves on the board if they are appointed or rather, well, if they get appointed, how long will you be on the board? And if you got reelected or you got elected, how long will you be on the board then, do you know?
If I remember right, the election is for a 4-year term.
Yeah, okay, good. Okay, all right, let me look at a few questions on here. They're not lined up for anybody in particular. Yeah, another question, let's say, have you looked at any of the recent library, laws that have been passed recently by the, Idaho legislature? I mean, they have a few things that have been newsworthy in the last 2 years. To do with children's books.
I've seen ones about, keeping ones out of certain material out of the children's section and keeping a separate adult section. I saw that in the news.
Okay. Good. Okay, that's the only question I have. Anyone else on the board? No? All right, and I guess we can bring it back for a question or two when we finish everybody before we go into the nomination process. So,
Okay.
Thank you, Colin.
Anyway, thank you for hearing me. I'm grateful the reading programs continue. That was one of the first jobs I had was volunteering at one of those. I was in junior high. Thank you.
Here. I'll stay with my sequence, whatever it was. If I can keep myself straight here, I got too many papers going on. Here we go. Dr. John Tardif.
Thanks for having me. I'll just give you a bit of information on myself and my understanding of formative libraries. I grew up in Post Falls. Actually, my family moved here in 1990, so most of my childhood was in Post Falls. I went on to get higher education in Texas and then in Washington, D.C., where I earned my master's degree and PhD in philosophy. I've been a lifelong teacher. I've taught elementary school homeroom, middle school homeroom, and a lot of high school and some college, in a lot of subjects, mostly though in English literature, even though it's not my degree field. I did my studying of that in undergrad that I had enough for a minor. So I've also served as an education administrator. I've been a principal of the K-12 school and dean of academics in charge of all the curriculum. So when I was in DC, I worked as a teacher and as an education researcher, and I actually started a family. Strangely enough, my wife was from Post Falls, but I met her in Virginia. It was a bit odd. But when my youngest turned 5, I decided to move back. So I spent 8 years in DC. I decided to move back to Post Falls because 2014 that was, and this was a good place to raise a family. For me, libraries were very important growing up. We had a pretty strict traditional family. We had no TV, but we did have a huge personal library. And so we were all very voracious readers, and my mom would take us to the library frequently, pick out books. And then when we got old enough to be, well, in my generation, riding around town without any supervision, we frequently go to Post Falls Library. Now that I have children, they're still coming to me with a complaint they don't have enough books to read. So I'm definitely vested in that. Now, when I'm thinking about libraries, I like to look at things in their historical context as well as their current needs. And I'm reminded of the fact that Ben Franklin founded the first libraries in America, first as a means of a touchstone for his debate club to see authorities, and secondly for the education of the populace. And I'm reminded as well from the founding fathers that Franklin considered an educated populace to be necessary for democracy. Washington considered a religious populace necessary for democracy. Jefferson considered a virtuous populace necessary for democracy. De Tocqueville saw all of that in his tour of America in 1835. Libraries seem to me to be one of the means of preserving that and enabling that, actually. We live in an age when everyone seems to have their lane and they stick to it. That's where they fight from, sorry. Library is a place where you can get a lot more information for children, it's super important because the children's imaginations, their sense of wonder, the curiosity has to be fostered at a young age. And I don't want to be just a Debbie Downer on the current age, but as a teacher, I can see that the imagination of children is under attack. And there's nothing more beneficial to them than good books. And as well for the adolescents. So I guess I'll stop there. And that's the timing. But anyway, thank you for having me. There's more.
All right, okay, hold on. Let's see if anybody has any questions. Start with her. Anyone? Well, any final questions, I'm sure I have one for you. Let me see, pick and choose one here. Well, I'll ask the same question, I guess, we'll ask John and Colin. How many of the CLN board meetings have you attended so far?
None.
None? Okay, you're understood. Okay, I assume you don't live in.
Ellen
the city of Post, yeah, for the lane, okay. Let me find another question, maybe something fresh. Oh, have you read the CLN trustee job description?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, okay, you familiar with that? Okay, how about the bylaws, do it a lot, the board itself?
I've looked over them, haven't done them closely.
Okay, and I think that's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
I have too many to pick from. Thank you. Okay. The next one, okay, Troy McCollum, please, thank you.
As Tom stated, my name is Troy McCollum. My wife and I have lived here for 7 years. We came up 3 years prior to that, starting once a year to check out the entire panhandle. So it was a great experience. And that's why we decided to move up here. I personally came here through the area twice in my late teens and early 20s. And just as an anecdote, early on with my relationship with my soon-to-be wife, way back when, I told her when I retire, I'd like to move to the Coeur d'Alene area. She said, what? Where's Coeur d'Alene? So, and it went through there. As far as credentials, I didn't go on to higher education. I have the proverbial school of hard knocks. I started working construction summer jobs when I was a teenager, young teenager. And 55 years later, I finally retired. I retired as a divisional environmental manager. Went through all the construction managerships. Worked primarily in Texas and in Northern California. So my experience, as I wrote to you, includes reviewing and implementing budgets, personnel requirements, contracts, scopes of work, et cetera, et cetera. I personally inspected up to 50 construction and development projects when I finally retired. So I come to the table with common sense, and I noticed a couple of years ago when the community library network was changing because of the youth issues and youth versus adult area book purchases, that sort of thing. And it caught my eye and became very interested in all that. So I saw the note come up, thought I'd throw my hat in the ring. So here I am. So any questions, feel free.
It was well timed, person. Trustee Fox, please.
I was an Eagle Scout and saw that you like scouts. And so it sounds like you, how much as work as an adult did you do Scoutmaster? And
Was
did that get you?
yeah, as an adult, I was then master with the Cubs, assistant scoutmaster, and then scoutmaster in the Boy Scouts. This was all in Texas. So we had a great time. A lot of good stuff up there. And I loved it. I only got to Life Scout personally because at the time I had a few years prior to that as a teen, became interested in music. So I played in multiple different venues and bands in school. Ended up in a jazz band in 8th grade, which we went around to the different schools in the district to perform in their assemblies, et cetera, et cetera. And that kicked me off with being more interested in it. Long story short, I ended up playing drums for about 15 years. When I was 15, my band opened for Sonny and Cher, which was pretty weird. And at 16, we went into San Francisco, opened for the Flying Burrito Brothers, which most of you probably don't know, but yeah, so a lot of good stuff. But construction was my game. And I did a lot of mentoring with the younger guys coming up, showing them the ropes, getting them to understand the importance of the math side of it, along with the importance of the social side of it. And just love it. So, any other question?
I have to do it. Everybody has to get questions for me, I guess. I'm in the wrong chair, I guess. This chair. Yeah, what are your thoughts regarding acquiring and retaining classic books?
I think that's a very high priority. I think classic literature belongs with the roots of our culture here in America, going back to the founding fathers. I think that civics is something that's finally coming to light on a state level, but I think in all the communities, that's one opportunity for the libraries to kind of interject the importance of civics from an early age up, which gives our future citizens a good foundation for understanding and believing in a righteous culture.
All right, and another, just a general question. Are you familiar with parliamentary procedures that are used by the board?
What I'm most familiar with is just from attending and being part of other committees. Since you guys know on the narrative that I was part of several committees in the Coeur d'Alene Coeur d'Alene School District. I got into that as one of the few token conservatives, if you know what I mean. And it was very interesting, but yeah, so I'm somewhat familiar with parliamentary procedures.
Okay, thank you. One last question, since no one else has any. And they're not in any sequences, grab them off my list of stuff here. Have you read any of the CLN's policies? And I'm throwing a couple that were kind of focal, the material selection and acquisitions policy, for the materials withdrawal and reconciliation.
So the
Strategic plan.
strategic plan and the objectives, I read through that. I liked it. Looks like you guys have zeroed in and focused on all the right stuff. And I appreciate that as a citizen of the community and like to help further that.
Okay. Anyone else have questions? It's a good thing I brought questions.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Troy. I appreciate it.
Thank you all. Appreciate the opportunity.
And our last person we have on our list today is, Ann Goff.
Hello. Actually spoken to the board a couple of times. I think trustee Hanley and Foss, it was the first time you were ever on the board that was the first time I spoke before the board. And the first time Director Walters was at the board as well. I spoke to the board, but I've never spoken before, to join the board. So it's an exciting new world. I'm excited for the opportunity. I followed the Community Library Network with interest for years. As an educator, a taxpayer, and a reader, I recognize that the library is an important part of our community. I've taught students of all ages, from pre-K through retirement age. As an educator, I see the necessity of reading and developing young minds, and I see the harm caused by early exposure to material that should never be forced on readers too young to handle it. I've been horrified to see people arguing to keep harmful material in front of children, and I'm grateful to the board and the director for your work to protect the rights of children who should never be harmed in this way, to protect the rights of parents who should be able to trust that this material will not be forced on their children behind their backs, and to bring the library into compliance with Idaho's state law. As a taxpayer, I care about sound governance and responsible use of hard-earned taxpayer money. I recognize that in a representative system, citizens have a duty to participate. I'd like to serve on the board because I believe that my education and professional history have given me knowledge, skill sets, and perspective that will serve the CLN well through 2027 and beyond. As a board member, I will take my responsibilities reviewing policies and the budget seriously. Finally, as a lifelong reader, I want as many people as possible to know and share the joy and satisfaction that comes from losing yourself in a good book, to take time away from the chaotic hustle and bustle so common to modern life, to sit in a quiet place and turn the pages as you lose yourself in a world sometimes familiar and sometimes completely foreign. It is a wonderful thing. I look forward to supporting the CLN as it builds and maintains a collection that brings good books to our community, from the timeless beauty and wisdom of the classics like Jane Austen and Sir Walter Scott, to the fun of an exciting new release like Project Hail Mary, fiction and nonfiction, prose and poetry. The library is and should be a treasure trove for the community. Thank you. Questions?
Okay, now, someone else must have a question besides me. Because when people speak, I keep adding more letters on here. I mean, I keep making check marks.
I'll
Yes,
ask
trustee.
one of your questions.
Yes.
So how many library board meetings can you estimate? you've been-
Oh, I think I can think of maybe a half dozen specific ones that I've been to, and I've probably been to more. I've watched more online. I've actually attended a few of the Coeur d'Alene library meetings as well, and I do know the difference between Coeur d'Alene and CLI.
That's good.
That was one of my questions. I stole that, you know. Let me see. Oh, just go back to repeat a question from the last speaker. What are your thoughts regarding acquiring and retaining classic books?
Oh, I think it's a high priority. I love the classics, and from everything from the need for intergenerational, a grandmother should be able to walk through the library with a grandchild and point out books that she loved. If they're good new books, and that's great, but if it's only new ones, there isn't that shared consistency through time. There's so many wonderful classics out there, and I think the decks have been stacked against the classics in a lot of libraries. They're allowed to be old and broken up instead of shared in a way that is meaningful and going to help excite new readers to the classics.
Okay, and then another question. Yes, oh, there's a question. Good, please. You could be fast. Go ahead. No, I have an unlimited number of questions, you know.
I was just gonna ask your 3 years in the area, if you were here when we ran about, but anyway, not that that matters. I'm just saying, what's, is it your teaching experience? Did you do stuff, teaching with grade school, or was it all college? And how do you have a perspective on, you know, the harmful material to children? Because you don't have children, but have you taught with them, or have you,
I've
do you
taught-
have relatives?
I've taught, I do have relatives.
Okay.
I have nieces, but I've taught pre-K through retirement age. And I've worked in the classroom and one-on-one. I tutor as well as teaching in the classroom. Yes, I've taught at the university level, but I've also worked with preschoolers and kindergartners. I've worked in private schools and public schools. I've worked across the board, and I've seen kind of what develops a love of language, and I've seen kids suffer with things. Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, I'll have the floor one last time. I can stay longer if you need to, and we'll do that. Here's one I didn't throw out there yet. Would your time accommodate meetings that we have, our 7 different libraries, not all the same day? With the prep times necessary, travel to each of our sites. We sometimes have special meetings, like for example, a budget meeting sometimes or 2. So would your schedule allow for something like that?
Yes, my schedule's pretty flexible, and I've planned for that and coming. For the first time I spoke at a library board meeting, it was in this library, actually. Yes.
So, only a question I'll ask at this time. Okay, thank you, appreciate that. Yeah. I guess, since I asked this question in the beginning of the process, does anyone have any follow-up questions for everyone before we go into the nomination process? Because after we nominate, we can still ask more questions if we're trying to deliberate between who we choose or consider. Any other questions for the applicants? Yeah.
Maybe we should ask it. I think maybe we should ask everybody about their ability to have, if they have the time to put into the board.
That's a good question, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of about, maybe, is everyone actually with the 5 people? Do you think you have the ability time-wise to actually attend meetings at least monthly? Sometimes it's more often than that, and there's prep work ahead of time and so forth. Is that a yes? Yes?
Yes.
Yes. And how about there? Oh, you already said yes.
All good.
Okay, very good. Okay, well, that doesn't reduce the competition then. That's not what I was looking for. No, I'm kidding. Okay. Anyone else have questions for? No? Okay, read what I've got next here. Okay, I have another comment here. I do a lot of homework sometimes just because I like to think ahead of time. It helps me think logically. I just want to thank everyone, first of all, for taking the time to come out here. It took a little while to put your narratives together and send them in and to think about it and so forth. So thank you everyone for that. The good news is, and it's encouraging, we had so many highly qualified candidates for the position. The bad news is we only have 1 seat to fill, so that's bad. But there will be 2 seats open next May, which will include the trustee that's selected for appointment today. So just because you may get appointed today doesn't mean it's just for the period between now and next May. The next May is the election, and June will be filling the space, whoever it is, but there'll be 2 openings next year available. So if you're interested, but you're not selected today, and you remain interested, you wish to consider attending further meetings and observing or the recordings and so forth that are posted on the CLN's website. And we, again, greatly appreciate each applicant's time and effort between submitting your narratives, okay, that down here, driving out here, speaking to the board, and most importantly, offering to serve the community. That's a big deal. So any other trustees wish to make any comments with that? No? Yes.
Just want to say there were so many good candidates that it was kind of painful to narrow it down to 1. And just
Yes.
if you're not chosen, it doesn't mean you're rejected, because I personally like to vote for a bunch of you. So anyway, thank you.
Okay, I guess we'll now jump over to the nomination process. Nobody cares. I'll jump to one end to the other end. Yes, trustee Plus.
I would be happy to nominate Dr. John Tardif. He's, I feel, one of the most qualified here because he's got not only a PhD, he's taught years at college and grade school and high school. He's a local. He grew up, went to Post Falls libraries. His family obviously was taught by his parents to love books, and that obviously carried him through. And he spoke his his own children have, a love of books. So he's got a lot of skin in the game, and I think Dr. Tardif would be, an outstanding candidate for us, trustee.
Thank you. Trustee Bell, any nominations?
Sure, I would like to nominate Ann Goff. She has been incredibly active in, the CLN for quite a few years now. And, she's been incredibly helpful to this board. I know for myself, she's brought me books and brought attention to books that were in our library and that were in neighboring libraries that were incredibly inappropriate for children, and that I was shocked by. And I was really impressed with her and her tenacity and her desire to make sure that children weren't exposed to those books. I think that she has, I think this will be an asset to us, and I think she's got a really great background for, that will be beneficial to the board.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
With small board rules, you don't need a second, but I have to do it anyway, and I second that, Diane Goff, what you said.
Okay, so there's two for Engels. Now, stuck with me. I don't have any questions at this time, but I have comments. I'd like to know, I did go and look at obviously, all the applicants, and again, it was very impressive. And I was concerned at the last meeting, when we announced that there was an opening, a vacancy, that I hope someone applies, and then it kind of went the other way around. It's like, I hope nobody else applies, because it wasn't easy. It really was difficult, and we had a few people that were interested. It dropped down already before they even showed up here, probably 2 or 3 more. So the community was ripe with lots of options for us out here. I have bullets on here. To be honest with you, I was going to either nominate Dr. John Tardif or Ann Goff. Those were the two debating back and forth. So I don't need to make a nomination apparently, because the move they've been made already. Let me give you what I read up on Dr. Tardif here. It says he's an educator and he's got a natural strong relationship with libraries. He's got a large family with an interest that directly affects his family. The board has received a very strong endorsement from a recent highly regarded former trustee. It was emailed to the board. He's expressed a concerted interest in preserving the innocence of children and in supporting Idaho statutes regarding libraries and achieving a safe environment for children. He's a long-term resident of the community, grew up here, and he has an extraordinary educational background. And he indicated desire also to run for the position should he be appointed. And some of these things I'm getting either from the narratives, or most either verbally here, or the narratives that were provided to the board. My observations on Ann Goff, I have on here. She's followed the library issues in the 2022-2025 campaign. I understand that she enthusiastically voted for trustee Tim and Tom. That was back in our big campaign day, and additionally, I understand she ensured her family did the same. So that's good. She's attended, that's not having 1 or more board meetings. Apparently, it's a lot more than 1 or 2. So we say it could be up to a half a dozen possibly. I know I remember seeing her in the crowd before, and I know she spoke before. So she's attended many CLN board meetings. She's also spoken, I understand, in front of the Coeur d'Alene Library. And I do recall this as well. She did assist with Trustee Bauman's campaign in 2025. So she's helped 3 out of the 4 of us with our campaigns. And she's obviously educated. So that doesn't give, there's a lot of competition here. She's been very active with, I understand, Clean Books for Kids group for 3+ years. That group has been fighting the inappropriate books for minors. She's responsible for having a Coeur d'Alene Press article out endorsing Trustee Bauman. She's worked with a group to identify and locate classics within the CLN and neighboring libraries in an attempt to increase their availability within the CLN. So I think it was a not investigation, but a look around amongst the old CINs, seeing where all these classics lay. We didn't have quite as many as we wanted at the time. And so my strong bottom on this one here is that she's demonstrated a long-term interest in our local libraries, going from 2022 through halfway through 2026. So I don't need to make a nomination, so I don't know if we want to just ask extra questions of our nominees. We have two right now. And if we don't, then at some point we proceed with a vote. So I'm open to suggestions among the board, what you'd like to do. Trustee Plus.
Don't you have to close nominations, or what if somebody speaks up and decides to nominate somebody more?
Right, if no one objects, the nominations are hereby closed. Okay, so we got that. So we have two people now, runners up. And again, we have really good, qualified, interested, engaged people out there. So please don't feel rejected if you don't get selected. So how would you suggest we go further? We just want to vote, or we want to ask further questions? Trustee Plus?
I have, 2 or 3 questions for each, but I don't know if you want to do one candidate at a time, everybody asks at once, or do you want to do one trustee at a time?
I think I'm open to whatever you want to do. I have more questions for anybody if you want, but, so if you have questions, I think go ahead and ask your question at either of the two, nominees. Yeah, I think.
One at a time.
Yeah, oh yeah, one at a time. So you want to do is with one person up and get 2 or 3 questions from the board still?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, you have a selection, we'd like to go first?
I'd like to ask and a couple questions. And John later. So Ann, my question is, if you were on the board and legal counsel starts telling us that courts are changing and starts advising us to change our materials, minors requirement or policies, harmful materials, to let 16 and 17-year-olds have full access to adult material.
Mhm.
And he's maybe saying some courts are starting to say this, or yet Idaho law says minors are 18. How are you going to react on this? Or what are you going to do? Anyway, because I think this may be something coming.
Right. No, it's a good question. And in addition to my work in education, I think I put some of this in my narrative, I believe. I've done a lot of translation and writing, editing focused work. So my first thought would be to push back on the lawyer and ask him if he's aware of cases or stories that would support maintaining it where it is, because, he's the expert and he's bringing his concerns about the risk for the library. But you can often find cases that would support the other side. And then a lot of it, I've worked with lawyers as a translator. I've done a lot of legal work in that. And a lot of it really comes down to getting the wording just right, to be able to maintain a strong policy that protects children and parents.
So as a follow-up on that, if it's just a blanket, 16 and 17-year-olds are given access to adult, that's the proposal. And we did have that minor cards policy when Tom and I came on board. The minor card
I remember
policy
that
allowed
one.
the adults to do
Yeah.
it. And trustees voted for it over here before us. How would you vote on it instead of just talking to the lawyer? How would you vote?
I'm not in support of making harmful materials available to minors. So I'm willing to work to get the language right to protect the library, but that's a strong stance.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've got more, but somebody else maybe wants to talk in.
Also, okay, Dan, one of the things that you'll be involved with if you get selected onto the board here is budgeting and looking at financial statements. Do you have any kind of background or ideas or what what our job is here, what we do on the board?
Yes, I've seen some of the board meetings that dealt with all the financial and checking the revenue and the expense and asking the questions to see and make sure that the taxpayer money is being used wisely. And I understand it's the staff that does the nitty gritty of that. And thank you for that. But I'm happy to participate in the board meetings, reviewing that and asking questions on the revenue and expense lines. Absolutely.
Okay, and we do get audited every year, meaning they get audited really. We get to evaluate how well they do, so. Okay, that's my question right now. Thank you. Trustee Foss?
So another question I thought of for you, if you are finding yourself in a debate with the trustees and you're in a minority position, obviously, I mean, it's obvious to you that you're a minority position. What would your approach be? Would you, if this is something you're really advocating for and you feel strongly about, how would you deal with it? Would you just back down and say, you know, let's don't be so tenacious or whatever, and allow it? You and I had a conversation. I don't know what you told me a year ago, but I'm just wondering what you would, how you would act, or how you would behave, or what actions you would take. Would you back down, or would you just stay with your position?
Well, I suppose it depends on if another trustee makes a good argument and convinces me that my position is wrong. But if you're talking on a, you know, this position you've already asked me about instead of something else, I think, as I understand it, this board agrees on protecting minors. And so to the extent, you know, we're all going to need to work to understand each other and make sure maybe there's a nuance that hasn't been understood. And I'm happy to hash that out and stand my ground.
Okay.
Okay, I'll just throw one more question right there. I don't know if I asked this question to you already. I asked someone already. Have you read any of these CLN's policies? And in particular, the ones that stood out to me here, they're not the only ones. We probably have 20 or 25 of them. I don't remember how many have on the website, but the material selection and acquisitions policy, the withdrawal and reconsideration policy, or the mature content collection. Can you speak to any of those, of what might have been covered in one of those?
I followed those closely back when they were being hashed out down to the level of a comma. And I remember printing some out and taking notes on them myself. And the number of special meetings that were put together to work everything out, and the amount of time that was put in. I appreciated all the work that this board has done. I need to refresh myself on some of them, but I remember, you know, the need to move material out of reach of children's reach that violates Idaho state law, and put it in the mature content collection, and finding a way to respect what was in the library and the law and everybody's rights in the process. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, trustee Plus. I don't have any questions. Not really. I'm finished.
This is my last one, right? What is your opinion on adding witchcraft and occult to our do not buy list? So that's an acquisitions policy. We've got some things that CLN is prohibited from buying, mainly against Idaho law type of things.
Mhm.
But how do you view the idea of adding witchcraft and adult the do not buy?
I look forward to discussing with the board exactly what's involved in that and with the lawyer as well, what is involved in the do not buy. I know that there are differences in the do not buy and removal, right? There's a
Yeah.
difference between the two. And then there's also a fair room for discussion and clarification between fantasy and witchcraft, right? So a lot of people who would object to what they would call witchcraft would not object to what they would call fantasy, like Lord of the Rings. And so you want any policy to be clear on what you're defining and how you're going about it. But there's certainly some groups out there that seem intent on pushing some very dark things on very young readers, which is not good.
What's your answer? How would you vote?
I need more details on it. I don't like, yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions for him? No, very good. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. And see Dr. Cardiff. You want to question for him? Yeah.
So, Dr. Tardif, since you haven't been through the Central Committee reading and vetting like all of us have had to go through, can you just give us a quick background? How would you classify your political views? Like, are you a moderate, are you a Republican, are you a social conservative? And then maybe your stance on morality. So we can kind of see how you would, if you would be a fit with the Central Committee.
Right. Political views in general. I'm afraid that a lot of the world would call me far right. Just because I am a traditional conservative. I am a Bible-believing Catholic. I believe in Christian morality. These things are not for me as something apart from public life. God is God, and the truth is the truth, and that applies at all times and all places. I don't necessarily agree with a lot of current politicians. I'm not going to hitch my wagon to any of their stars at all. The younger people on both sides of the parties today because of that, but my principles as philosophical principles and Catholic principles remain what they are.
Okay.
Is that clear enough?
I think so, yeah.
I'll throw one out. If you're appointed, would you, I think I always saw in writing that you would consider running for an extra 4 years as a candidate later on. Do you think you'd have the ability time-wise and also funding-wise? I can just tell you, it was thousands of dollars for myself, and I think Trustee Plus, and I think Trustee Bauman. Some of it came from the community, but most of it came out of our own pockets, I think. So is that something you could make it work?
I can speak at the time. I'm currently employed as an editor for a publishing house, so I read books. That gives me a lot of flexibility for the time. I'm fully remote. The publishing house is in Kansas, so time is all right. I haven't put much thought into funding. That seems like a bridge to cross when I got there. So I'm not going to count my chickens before they're hatched. So to that, I just have to say I don't know right now.
Okay. Yeah, I thought someone would fund it for me when I was running and found out it doesn't work like that.
You told us we would get all the money.
We've been together, we were disappointed, and we had to open our wallets a few times. Yes, okay, other questions, Trustee Fox?
So Dr. Tardif, what guidelines do you have? Maybe you've seen our policies, of what guidelines in general would you set out from your own perspective for keeping harmful materials to minors accessible in our libraries? What would kind of be the practical guidelines you would want to follow?
So actually, I spent a fair amount of time thinking about this question because I earlier applied for a job as the collections manager in Post Falls. So I went through sample books and went through parts of the collection and went through, looking at what does or does not merit to be included in the adults only section. And one of the things that struck me is that although the guidelines from Idaho are pretty clear in some ways as to where not to go, there's a fair amount of interpretation room in these things. Like some books that you might look at might have a lot of profanity or imply things, but not include something explicitly pornographic. But knowing children as I do, mostly myself, my children, my many, many students, I would err on the side of taking away more rather than less. That is, there was one book I was reading, there were lots of implied sexual encounters. For me, that would be going way too far, especially because there are very immoral implied sexual encounters among drug addicted people who are living horrible lives. With children, you don't need to try to force the knowledge of good and evil to that degree on them when they're young. They're not ready for it. They can't handle it. And if it resonates with them, I'm sorry, then their lives are bad, but I can't fix that really. So that's sort of thing. I would definitely err on the side of, quite frankly, putting more away and making the collection more restrictive. So the Idaho law would say it's implicitly pornographic, which is like an actual sex act description of a body part. I think we should go a little farther than that.
I'll throw one more question to keep it balanced out. Obviously, the library, the decision is not strictly regarding the appropriate or inappropriate material for minors. Go back to a question I asked someone, I think that was Ann here. Budgeting experience. What kind of budgeting experience might you have that you could share with the board?
So I was a principal of a K-12 academy for 2 years, and then worked as dean of academics, which is vice principal, for another 10 at the same institution. And so my experience in budgeting has to do with the school. So we handle things like teacher salaries, materials, facility costs, production, and publications, fundraising. All of that was part of what we did. And it was a pretty tight budget. No one was exactly throwing money at the school. Our fundraising managed to take care of maybe a third of our total operating costs. We always needed more money. So I guess I have an experience in stretching a dollar as far as possible, trying to keep the programs as good as they could be.
Okay, that's it, Les.
My last question, so do you have children in these minors categories? And if you were to feel confident enough to just let them have free run at a CLN library, say Post Falls, what are the kind of books you want your children to be able to go from aisle to aisle and so forth and find? What books do you want to have in our collection for children?
I have a pretty long answer to that. I haven't prepped it. I spent a long time dealing with, when I was an educator, one of the most things that parents most often ask is, what books should my kids read? Because they don't know, where to get them. So I eventually made a list that I could hand out to them, possibilities. But so letting my children have a free run of the library, I can tell you that right now I don't even do that. Because for a book to be bad, they have to run everything by me. And the older ones, I'm actually much more careful on because they're more likely to find something I really don't want them to see. Like a young adult book that, might deal with drug addiction or sexual abuse. Even as part of the backstory, I don't want my 15-year-old, my 13-year-old to encounter that yet. They're going to, but there's time for it. So I wouldn't let them have to run. Every book has to come by me. What I'm looking for in a good book for them, I don't know how long you want to go on, but there's different stages of child development, right? We have our early stages, which kind of the stage of awakening or wonder. This is kind of kindergarten through maybe second, third grade. These books, my little ones, I got 2.5-year-old, and I read to her all the time. Book about the story of the fox going out on a snowy night. Thomas the Tank Engine, a lot of old, great illustrated classics are great for this, just opening their eyes. There's nothing wrong with them, but also they're written in a sort of elegance of language that's really appropriate, like a children's poem to them. So that works quite well. There's a lot of newer children's books that are just crude. And there's nothing wrong with them per se. I wouldn't ban them from the library, but I don't want my kids being attached to bad illustrations or poorly crafted language. Language is a skill that you learn by reading good stuff. So for the middle kids is a different time. There's a time when you're really growing your worldview for up to about 6th, 7th grade. And then from 7th grade through like 9th grade, it's time for what we as teachers used to call it, time of crisis and confirmation. We're beginning to judge more. So what I'm looking for the elementary grades, I'm looking for mostly the classics or things that are related to the classics. It's a time to develop your understanding of good and evil, to broaden your ideas concerning other people, to put yourself in someone else's shoes, like literature, even children's stories, very especially children's stories, gives you vicarious experience. It puts you in someone else's shoes. It's really important that they develop that at that time. And it's really important that they have noble protagonists in there. There's always going to be a bad guy. Like Chesterton says, the reason why we have dragons and fairy tales so that we learn as children, excuse me, the dragons can't be slain. It's important. So we have that. Then the more important, though, not more important than that, but building off that is the age, middle school age. I have 2 now in that age group. That's the hardest to find good books for. Because it's the age of crisis and confirmation, we call it, because they're really beginning to kind of question their own place in the world a little bit. They accept at a young age that their adults are like their heroes and role models, Papa's all powerful. And then they begin to realize at a certain age, he's not, and he can be wrong, and he's not perfect. That's just the start of it, I think we've all lived through that to some degree. But also it comes into they begin to notice the rest of the world. The guys who are playing it down the street have a completely different perspective than they do. They're talking about bands or music or shows that my kids don't have. Here's a time when they're starting to think more. They need something a little bit higher level. And here the classics really come into their own because the characters are real, they're universal. The one problem with the classics at this age is that the majority of people these days don't have the ability to really read at that level. So it's just true. I've taught a lot of students and I've noticed it going down over time. Over the last 20 years, I recommend Dickens to somebody. Dickens has a lot going for him, but no one even wants to pick it up. The print's too small. Fortunately, my children also have no TV, and we can handle that. Robert Louis Stevenson, he wants, that age where things get it's just more real in a certain way, but still the good and evil are there. Take Treasure Island for an example. Long John Silver is one heck of a character. He seems to be good, but he's definitely not. And you have all these different shades of characters. It's much more in-depth than you would find in elementary school. There's a lot of good stuff in elementary school too, where there are bad guys, like one's The Winged Watchman about a family in Holland in World War II. They have to deal with their neighbors betraying them. That's a great book for 6th graders. So I'm looking for something that still supports the worldview that already good is good, true is true. That supports that, but it gets more in depth for the 7th and 8th graders. And then when we get to the age of judgment, in a way, and these are sweeping generalizations, but that's the later high school years. And that's when you can really start handling history, and not history through the lens of the 3rd grader, which is always really shortened and pretty much black and white, but history and and a great deal of its unpleasantness. You can start handling the beginnings of philosophy. They start asking bigger questions. I know this from my own students. You get questions about right and wrong in general, about universal morality. And there's a lot that this is treated in higher level literature that should be, and in history, that they should be able to gravitate towards. Fortunately, letting them run free through the library, once they get to this age, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, usually their tastes are, at least my kids and a lot of the kids I taught, their tastes are pretty well set, so they're not going to just go towards that. That's, again, I could go on for a long time with this because I'm working off some examples and there's a lot of others. But yes, overall, wonder and curiosity in lower years, a solid moral foundation that as well delights the imagination and begins to build a love for goodness and truth in the middle years. More deep understanding of human nature, vicarious experience, stepping out of yourself, learning empathy, learning nobility in the face of hardship in those later years, and then finally the age of judgment and the maturing of the full judgment. That's what I'm looking for across the board.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, it was really long.
Other questions? No? Okay, thank you, Dr. Todd. One more comment. It's not a written comment before, I just jotted it down, but I hope all the candidates remain interested because there is a, campaign period coming up for those set of elections next May. And it'd be good if they stick around because some great competition and great talent and people, great interest in here, so I just want to make sure that's very clear. And again, no one's being rejected, somebody's being brought in, so. Okay, I guess at some point here, we're going to go to a voting process. Is there any other comments or questions we want to make about the different candidates or nominees, I should say? No. Okay, I'm gonna let you know one of mine is that I very like, just so it's not strange, unknown, I slightly don't have a lot of knowledge of you. I know both persons that are finalists now. I mean, I know who they are, name recognition and so forth, so it's personal no matter who I reject and accept, so just so it's known out there, so, so I guess we can go to a voting course, and I'll go back, and just say that both candidates, in my opinion, because it looks like on the swing vote now, almost bring identical qualifications to the table. And I guess one side has been very active in what's going on in the libraries, and another person is has not been, not necessarily bad, but they weren't as active in what's going on in the library, in the CON. So that's the swaying point I'm leaning on here, just so you know. So I guess if there's no objection, we go ahead and proceed to a voting process. I don't know if they're voice votes or whether you want to call them recorded or not, but I guess Trustee Plus.
Yeah, well, my vote is with Dr. Tardif. I think he's clearly head and shoulders above with literature, and he understands. And I think that's would be a big benefit to our trustees or to our board to be able to write policies. He does have very strong experience with budgeting. I know I ran a company, my own business, but he's basically done the same with the school, having to worry about all the salaries and stuff. So I think Dr. Tardif is definitely my vote.
Okay, Trustee Arson.
And that's my vote. Like I said, it's painful to only be able to vote for one.
I guess I'll go ahead and vote again, because I know, again, vaguely, I don't know either one of those candidates deeply, but I know that one has been much more actively involved in the library process and the happenings. I'll call her an activist of sorts. She has been, and that's nothing to be taken away from Dr. Tardif. So I'm going to go ahead and vote for Ann Gott.
I am very impressed with each one of you that came today and super grateful for each of you. And I hope that honestly, we're being really honest with you that it's been really hard to choose. And we do have an election coming up, and we really hope that we have great candidates for that election, because we're always nervous that we won't find a good candidate. So I do feel like all of you in this room would be excellent candidates for that election. But I am going to vote for Ann.
Okay, well, I guess the majority is Ann Gott. So congratulations, Ann. And I guess I have a oath of office. I have the statutes I have to read off here, so I'll come over and join you. Yes. And you can have anyone else, yes. We're not required to have a board member of us read it, you know?
But you can have your hand on whatever you'd like.
Yeah, we definitely do. Yeah. I'll come around, and unless someone else is gonna do it, I'll administer the oath. I'm back for a horse. Let me see where I am. Who holds it? I don't even know. You do, I guess? I don't.
You want me to hold it? Yeah, yeah. Perfect.
What's the suggestion? Okay. Okay. And then just repeat after me the different portions here. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Idaho,
Constitution of the State of Idaho.
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
I will faithfully discharge the duties
of Community Library Network Trustee
of Community Library Network Trustee
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank
you. Sure. I think you get a seat over there in a minute. Yeah. Spaces. Give me a minute to get caught up here.
And the whole. It's coming, yeah.
I already read the whole packet for today's meeting and.
Memorize.
Right, that was a lot of research, homework and so forth, and again, it was not easy. I spent a lot of time myself, I'm sure the other trustees did as well. We'll make a good fit, we think fits best. And I really do hope that the people that indicated interest today will consider coming back and taking a shot at this with two of these pieces. All right, let's see, we're moving on now to, agenda item number 10, the director's report, please.
All right, thank you all. Make this as brief as I can. Just a few updates. A lot of what I've done over the last month is part of the rest of the agenda, obviously the budget, took up a lot of my team's time. Anyway, collection development updates. This still refers back to the original 140 titles, now infamous 140 titles. In my last report, there were 42 titles deemed harmful and 51 deemed unharmful, according to the law, with approximately 30 titles remaining to be reviewed. The discrepancy with the original total of 140 is due to the fact that some of the titles are either no longer part of the collection or lost or damaged. So you have to keep in mind that the original list was made when we were part of CIN, and then now we're obviously not. So in the time from the original creation of the list, the 140 titles is a bunch of ink on a piece of paper, but what was actually on the shelves in my office or now in the collection development manager's office was more fluid and fluctuating. So just so people don't get too caught up in the 140. But anyway, the breakdown as of today is actually 90 titles are designated as harmful and will be processed for the mature content collection. 21 titles are still pending final review. There were 14 titles that are not in the CLN collection. I'm just giving these numbers so you can all add it up to 140 if you want. But I still need to kind of figure out where the other 15 are. So 90, 21, 14, 15, I think is 140. So just to reiterate, those more of those ones that were deemed unharmful in the first round, holders and some of those that were remaining had a second look from my collection development manager and myself, and mostly my collection development manager. And so that's up to 90 now. So 9 titles are designated as harmful under the law. Those are being moved. They're being moved to the mature content collection. 21 titles still pending review. And then I'll find out where the other ones are eventually when I close out that project. But as soon as the technical services department, moves these items to the mature content collection, it'll be a lot easier for everybody who's interested in this project to find that. When people ask for the list, if it doesn't exist, it's technically not a public record, but then I can, create a list based on what I'm looking at on our shelf. But when it's all said and done, the easiest thing for people to do will be just a, location search in the catalog itself, and they can see what's in the content collection. But right now it's up to 90. That doesn't include the 16 from the previous request. So I guess it's 106. There were 16 titles that were requested for location, if you remember that. So that'll be an update as soon as it might be depends on how long technical services takes to process. By processing, they're gonna have to relabel it and recatalog it in the system. So eventually that room, which has been there for a while, rightfully so, will eventually be filled with, not filled, but contain stuff. The compliance with the law was the purpose of the first round, and this obviously will always continue. The second round is to ensure that the minor collection serves the community within which the library exists, as expressed through the community needs assessment survey and of course through the officials that the community elected to govern their library. Consequently, the collection development department will be looking at subjects mentioned by our community as inappropriate for the minor collection. For example, non-explicit sexual content, witchcraft and the occult, graphic violence, and political ideologies. Again, it is important to reiterate that the mature content collection is reserved only for material that violates the Children's School and Library Protection Act. For other inappropriate materials, we rely upon our material selections and acquisition policy for guidance. Titles that have inappropriate content as opposed to illegal content will be relocated to the general collection, thereby providing parents with freedom and authority to choose the level of access that they deem best for their child. Families will know clearly what the standards are for the minor collection, as well as what the standards are for a public library's general collection, and can choose accordingly for their children. Just a quick marketing update. The marketing department has distributed the new Discovery magazine, which I think all the board members got, as well as our strategic plan brochure, thanks to Megan Ward for all her work to make this happen. These materials are available to trustees should you need them for speaking engagements or an event that you would like to have them for. The first edition of Discovery coincides with what was formerly our summer reading guide, and programming and events will be a major part of the magazine. However, we hope that Discovery can be much more than that for our community moving forward, and so I welcome trustee input on ideas for Discovery content at any time. So if you, as you get to, you get a feel for the magazine and what it can do in the community and what your constituents give you feedback, feel free to reach out and say, hey, it'd be nice to have a page that said this or that, or whatever content you would like to see in there. It's not just the CLN magazine, but it's the board of trustees who runs the CLN. So if you have ideas for what the magazine could contain, it's not just meant to be a program guide. It's meant to be a marketing tool for the whole district and all that we do. Along with the strategic plan brochure, there is a strategic plan page on our website, which we will use to keep the community up to date on our accomplishments. So it's not super convenient to republish things as we accomplish things. So that brochure is kind of the standard for the 4-year period. But on the website, if we accomplish something, we'll somehow highlight that, so that people can see more a living document of over the next 4 years as we try and peg off each of our goals and objectives. So that would be the best place to go if you want to see any sort of change to the document. But this one is more of a marketing piece, to be able to use in the community. Just a couple of things. There will be a 50th anniversary celebration for the CLN on Saturday, November 14th. More information is forthcoming, thanks again to Megan and the team that will be working on this event. So we struck a team up and we're going to be working on the celebration, which will be at Hayden. It'll be at the Hayden branch. And then also there'll be an annual staff day on December 4th. So I think some of you will remember that from last time we did that. So there'll be an annual staff day on December 4th. And just finally, some human resource updates. As a result of some internal human resource developments, our collection development manager has taken on the role of technical services librarian. That's actually one of the job descriptions coming up later. The new collection development manager is Rebecca Rhodes, who was recently brought in as the Rathdrum branch manager. Casey Peters has moved from Apple to become the new Rathdrum branch manager, and we currently have an opening for a branch manager at Apple. Our new human resource specialist, Amanda Miller, will be starting on June 1st, and we are still in search of a combined adult and youth programming specialist to serve both Harrison and Pinehurst. So that's a bit of a unique type of position, so we're still trying to get some quality candidates for that. And that is the end of my report.
Trustee Allison, please.
Yeah, so looking through the Discovery magazine, I was really impressed. Didn't really think the magazine was necessary at first, but I hope everyone, lots of people in the community look through it because I've already calendared several big events in it. And I like the way that you slipped it in that it's available to trustees should they go out and do presentations in the community. Hint, hint. Another comment that I had was that a couple weeks ago, I reserved 2 items for the library and they both came into my library the same day. And that was super impressive. So this is way better than kind of part of, getting for some. And yeah, I think that's everything I have. Thanks.
I just wanted, yeah, I forgot, go ahead. I asked lots of questions, but that's done.
I was trying to take notes, but, maybe you can send out an email or something. I, you don't have to say it all again, but the staff changes. I lost track of who was moving where and what was, and anyway, I'd like to keep up on.
Yeah, you can also see it on the website. Like if you go to the About Us, we have a picture of each of us
Oh,
in our
okay.
position. So yeah, I'm sure that's probably up to date. Yeah, so Rebecca Rose will be there under collection development manager, and then Casey will have moved to the Apple branch, to the Raptor branch manager. So under About Us, it lists us in kind of an,
Okay.
it's not the actual organization chart, but it lists us in sort of a pyramid.
But I know collection managers was a big thing you went through and did interviews, and it was actually a nationwide search. I think.
Yes.
How did we just,
Rebecca Rose was actually in that search. She was, we had some very good candidates. We obviously went internal to begin with, but yeah, Rebecca was in that as well.
okay,
She ended up being hired in as bathroom branch manager, and then the new development changed up, and I'm personally very happy with the situation now. So I think it's worked out favorably for the director as far as, the objectives I'm trying to, accomplish. One of which is to make sure all my staff are very happy in the positions they're in. So this was a domino effect from an initial request to be put in a position that the person wanted to be in. So we just followed that through.
so if you're happy, I'm probably happy too. So.
That's what I like to hear.
I just had one comment on the director's report, the printed one is given to the board. It's not it's not an error, it's just for readability. Second page, it has the histograms or the charts right there on the volume of business of different months. And the first chart on the upper half, the whole piece there, it goes from March to April, which seems normal flow. You go from the right, I think typically. And then my mind gets turned upside down. We go up to the bottom chart and they go from April to March, back the other way. It's a little bit of a challenge to look at the trends, if you want to call it that, going up or down on one chart, and then I get down there and I have to reverse think it. So if it's reasonably easy, you have very talented graphic people. And at least for me, speaking for me, that's my little challenge.
And make sure it's the best possible product it can be. And I will say that this, we're gonna be coming up on the anniversary of not being part of a consortium. So once we hit that mark, we can now look year to year with more reasonable or applicable data, because there's no sense in comparing this year to the previous year where we were still part of a consortium. So eventually we look at how we're presenting these stats. The key one here for us when we first took this method was to show the population versus the circulation, so that you can at least see visually that, like we're in Spirit Lake right now. So the population of Spirit Lake at 2,465 is doing circulation at a similar level to the other ones that you can sort of visually see, right? So Pinehurst has a population of 1,784, and its circ is a little bit lower. But then you look at Athol with a population of 738, and its circ is, quite good compared. So that was my idea behind it.
Post Falls appears to be quite illiterate.
Well, that's an interesting statistic, a high population, and it also goes to show probably the robust position that Hayden's in, especially coming out of CIM, where there's a lot of usage in Hayden, and then that's kind of what we're assessing now, especially with the non-resident cards and people that live in that area but could go to Coeur d'Alene, but could go to Hayden instead. So yeah, there's a lot to the statistic, but again, I'm just saying that we're happy to revise it and look at other ways to present it as we start to compile year over year. That makes more sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. And because we look at 1 month compared to the month before, you can't really see a trend, but now we can see almost, again, to a year's point, we can see is the usage increasing, decreasing, remaining the same. Trustee Foss?
My, little comment on the discovery. Not that it, I'm just wondering if the CLN has a definition of what teens is. I know when I grew up, I think we got a special birthday cake or something, and we turned 13 because we were a teenager. But anyway, on one page, 9 teens are 11 to 12, and I go through the book, and sometimes it's 12. Circle them all here, but anyway, they're scattered around. Different libraries seem to have different definitions. So maybe
Well,
you guys can
yeah, I'll talk to
Align-
programming. Yeah.
align yourselves on
Yeah.
what teams
I wouldn't
are.
get that confused with the collection development. Or is different, like teen, young adult, juvenile is, probably more clear to speak on what that meant. So I'll have to go back to the program department and see whether they have some more fluidity in how they're defining, teens in that case. So I'd have to check the program.
Page 14, mini kitchen teen cooking is ages 13 to 17.
Yeah.
And we got, I think I pulled, but anyway, there's different places there.
Yeah, I'll follow up. I'll try and get to the bottom of that.
Okay.
Okay, and if this, I'll close out on the director's report. I have a couple of comments, not questions or anything like that. I appreciate the directors making awards and likely other staff members' work in producing the printed glossy strategic plan. It was very fancy, multi-layered, and I really have not reviewed it carefully yet. I know we were involved in the strategic plan, but I'll go back to that. And in alignment with an item on in the strategic plan, we now have the Discovery magazine, which I also have not yet read through cover to cover. I got to the director's report page on the inside, and that's as far as I got. And then lastly, it's related to the director here. I wish to compliment the director. There's a section entitled From the Director's Desk in the May edition of the CLN District Community Newsletter. And what I found worth highlighting is that I thought it was impressive. Director wove together honoring Memorial Day and Traditional Family Values Month. And in particular, he called out the immortal patriotism and virtue that we have all benefited from out of American families. And he continued, it is fitting that as we celebrate the fundamental building block of civilization, we also commemorate those who died to protect it. So well done, Mr. Director. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. It was nice. When that was the electronic e-letter goes out. And thank you. Other questions and issues regarding the director's report? Very good. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and take a break for 10 minutes. And then we'll be back. So we'll meet here again in approximately, let's say 4:13. Thank you. We're now down to agenda item number, and I enjoyed that one. That was break. Job description revision. So we're looking at the technical services librarian position that was given to the board. And also make note that we're about 30 minutes behind schedule. We've done very well the last 2 or 3 meetings. So if we can keep ourselves fairly close to our ending time we shoot for, we'll do that. And I'll continue on that in a minute. For example, the budget. We'll go into the budget for a while. We're not resolving the budget today. So it's a preview to me, and we're not going to go beyond the time we allot for that according to the schedule right here. So in any case, we'll move on to the technical services librarian position description was given to us. Does anybody have commentary on the changes that were given to us to put this into use? I'll jump on one. I only found one thing, just a suggestion. It may not be error, you may not agree with it. The first paragraph and the end of it, the last sentence says, has knowledge of core values of librarianship, blah, 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 across the way. I'm just wondering, is it has knowledge, or if you look at the sentence before that, performs a wide variety of such and such. So I'm suggesting, and I'm not saying I have to go with that, is it demonstrates knowledge of core values? Should something be more action oriented? Because people can have all kinds of things in their head, but I mean, are they demonstrating it? To me is probably a little more action oriented, and you can see the, actual performance. So it's just a minor suggestion. I couldn't find anything else in it. You got lots of red lines and green lines and black lines, but, that was the first thing that caught my eye. So open it up. What do you think?
I'm not particularly, married.
Good, you're gonna
For lack of a better term, to those kinds of linguistic concerns.
Okay, so you're okay with that?
Yeah.
Is the board okay with the change?
I didn't get it.
Okay, it's on the first paragraph, the last sentence where it says has knowledge of, and replace has knowledge of to demonstrates knowledge of core values. An acceptable change?
I like it.
Yes? Oh, I forgot, the new trustee has to weigh in as well. I'm not a teacher, so you can tell me if
Demonstrates is good.
trustee Plas, please.
How can someone demonstrate it without being in this position? If they have knowledge, you can ask them. They know it, but I don't know how you demonstrate it if you're interviewing for this position.
Well, there's an interview, this is the actual job that this was a performing. This is not a, well, let the director respond, I don't know, but
But if
I
somebody's
think it's not,
not in this position, how do they? Why can't you just leave it knowledge?
it can.
If you were to interview somebody, I don't know how they demonstrate it, is what I'm saying. You're trying to.
How could you perform a wide variety without being in a job either, in the very first sentence? These are not interview questions, this is performance that we're expecting, I believe, out of a staff member that's hired. Yes,
Well, it just,
I'm not wedded to my.
no, that's fine. I mean, how these things are structured, a lot of it, let's put it this way. It's not poetry. And I wouldn't be submitting this to my master's degree in English literature professor, right? Some of this is just being tweaked because it's a job description we have on file. So I don't mind changing the demonstrates knowledge of, it's a statement of duties. So they need to demonstrate that, they could demonstrate it in a resume, they could demonstrate it in different ways. Demonstrate works with, if we're gonna get into the nitty gritty of grammar and writing, then yeah, performs and demonstrates are more parallel to have those two words, right? So that sounds great. But the green stuff in here is what we're adding to this job description in order to satisfy the objective of what we're doing here. This librarian job description existed, it still does exist. We're revising it because of a situation where the staff person is moving into this position as technical services librarian. So for me, the most important things are the green things we've added because that's what that job is gonna be. They're gonna have interlibrary loans, they're gonna do specific things. Other than that, it's a canned job description in many sections. You know, basically the entire last page is the same. It's supposed to be the same. And as we go through these and we notice, oh, the wording's slightly different, we're trying to make them more, trying to make them match across all jobs. So that being said, I'm totally fine with these kind of word changes. Unless I had all the job descriptions in front of me and they all started with has knowledge of. And then we change this one to demonstrates and I go back and find, 5 of them said has. So it doesn't make or break my ability to do this.
So does anyone object to my suggestion? Hearing none, we now go with demonstrates. Thank you, it's been noted. Any other changes and recommendations on this position description, trustee Foster?
I'm just trying to get oriented on where and what this position is, because we got librarian. So on your chart that you gave us, I thought public service manager was the manager of all the library managers.
Yeah.
So I would think all of them under this public service manager are the librarians. But
No.
now we also have librarians over here.
No, so technically, there hasn't been a librarian, a librarian is an MLS holder, someone who holds a professional librarian. And most of our librarians sit at the management level, right? So technical services manager, Carrie Wilson, right? Public services manager, Nick Manson. They're all librarians at the manager level. And we don't have very many departments that have a MLS holding librarian underneath them. Because the departments aren't that big, right? So this person is going to be a technical services librarian underneath, on that chart, the technical services manager. So the technical services manager has a staff of, let's say, 5, the courier, and then like 4 catalogers and processors. This person is being added to that department. This person was in that department. This is the collection development manager, is going back to that previous position, so that's slightly tweaked. So as far as, because there are other MLS holders under any of those departments. So that's why this position was actually created, but it was a library, as if any librarian hired into the CLN would fall under the librarian job description. Nondescript to a specific role, just an MLS holder. Right? It wasn't satisfactory to do this new thing we're doing with Rachel Dykes. So we're specializing this job description specifically for the technical services librarian.
So I did not realize librarian was synonymous with MLS.
Yeah. So let's put it this way. So right now we have a collection development department with 1 person in it. It's the collection development manager. Let's say 10 years from now, we're so much bigger and we need another person in that department. And we're gonna hire them at the MLS level. We'd hire them in a collection development librarian. We're not a manager, right? So that's what this position is. It's sort of it's our first use of a librarian job description underneath a management level position.
Okay.
That makes sense? Yeah, so that's what it is. The wording is just some additions there to make it more specific to this particular task.
Okay, do you want to have any changes other than the one we made initially? Are you accepting all of the changes noted by the director when it was provided to the board? Trustee Plus?
So if it says librarian in the title, I would expect, I guess I just found it, acceptable experience and training. It's acceptable or required, but you would be required to have an MLS, is what I would think. That's what you're calling a librarian. Can you have a 2-year degree, but it's just acceptable to have a master's? Or I would think if you're gonna call it librarian and make it synonymous with MLS, you would have a required thing for MLS.
Yeah, I mean, we did that for the branch manager, but we didn't have the additional comments about combination of education and experience. I mean, technically, see, master's degree in library, you could have a services librarian who has a master's degree in archival studies, right? And we would take that because they spent 25 years technically cataloging or working with archives. Their degree might not be in MLS, but they're coming in at that level. If it was, you can get a 2-year degree in library tech, like a diploma. They're not hiring at this level, they'd be hired lower in that department, be doing processing or copy cataloging. So it's not a guarantee that the person will have the actual MLS. That's why we're allowing for the combination of education and experience, specifically in technical services. Does that make sense?
I just don't like you saying acceptable. I would rather say something about required experience and training.
So that goes back to the other thing. I mean, if we change it here, that's the bolded centered heading of every job description, right? Position requirements and or special qualifications. The next one is acceptable experience and training. Next one is performance aptitude. So that's the kind of stuff that we're making consistent across all job descriptions. So if I change it here, I'll be bringing 30 job descriptions to you at the next meeting, all with. Oh. I will, but I'm just saying, what do you see what I'm saying? Like,
We could make a motion just to authorize you to change them all.
that would be up to the board. That would be up to the board. The job descriptions are your purview. So you're free to change those black bolded standard headings if you so desire.
What is, just so I know, what is trustee Plus's suggestion, just so I understand it? What do you want written or changed? Unless you want to do it, but what are you suggesting?
I just think if we're calling it a librarian, and that means they come in with a master's, ideally a librarian means MLS, you would make it required, and we've got it acceptable.
This thing.
So as long as the director knows that acceptable means required, I guess I'm okay, but I think it's not. the right way to do things, but, I don't wanna cause it.
Let's see, Dominic, I know you.
But as you said, Director, they could have a master's degree in something else that's applicable to what they'd be doing. And so I don't know that we have to pigeonhole them into being a master's degree in library science, right?
In this case, yes.
Yes.
I prefer not to change 30 job descriptions. I don't know. We'll be leaving this particular, unless like we waiving this particular item. What's the else?
So,
Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry, I'm gonna cut you off.
I was just gonna move that we accept the technical services librarian as amended.
I had that written down as well. It has been moved to approve, I guess it will be, the position description provided to the board as amended just now. It's just the one change in the first paragraph. All those in favor, say aye.
I.
All those opposed? Guys have it. The position description is hereby approved. Moving on now to the next item is the 2027 budget discussion. I don't know, do you wish to like give us a general feel for where this comes, what you're giving us, so to speak, or not?
Yes, I'd love to.
All right. Please do.
Yeah.
For the draft.
So this is draft 1 of the budget, and we have drafts 2 and 3.
Another copy somewhere? Do you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's the
Yeah, she's got a small.
small one.
Oh, you have a small version? I'll just add.
Yeah.
All right,
Will that do?
I can work with that.
Okay.
Anyway, this is draft 1, so, there's lots to, work on and things can change, obviously, in some key areas over the next 2 months, leading up to the budget hearing in August. So don't want to belabor too much. I think we just want to focus on some of the key elements here, but before I do that, I actually want to start by saying, I'm very grateful to the board for supporting all the maneuvering that I've managed to accomplish throughout this first year here, to get to a point where I have a CAO and a finance specialist who are excellent at doing what they do. I presented you a budget last year, and it's not as well presented as this one, and that's 100% due to the finance specialist, Rachel Hansen, and my CAO, Yasmin Harris here. So I just want to start by saying that, because whatever this may look different than what you've seen before, and all those differences are great, because it's just done better. And I'm very grateful for all the work that they did. So having said that, you're looking at the first column, year-to-date total, is showing this year's budget, and how it plays out, and then I'll show columns. 1%, if you were to give us 1%, 2%, or 3%, was the beige column headings, 1%, 2%, 3%. And then the budget assumption, obviously, is the percentage change, and then the actual monetary number change. And then we have the proposed budget. The proposed budget is a 2% budget. So you'll see GL codes 400 to 470. These are the revenues. We're projecting better revenue, the upcoming fiscal budget, based on the projected year ends of how revenues are going so far this year. So we're seeing a trajectory of better revenues, for example, with copier, obviously donations, fees with the non-resident cards. So we're seeing better revenues, so that's why the revenues are projected as such. Then you get into the middle section there. This is going to be probably the biggest talking point, the gray and green section. That's talking about the funds we have available, which aren't part of the revenue of that current year, fiscal year 26, 27. So we currently have these funds, and they're sitting there, and we're going to be applying them in that year, but they're not revenue for that year, or coming in that year. And then after you finish that gray area, you get into the expenses. So it's pretty self-explanatory. I'll just touch on a few points here. So the salaries, we're looking at an 8%.
Quick question.
Yes.
YTD year-to-date total, I think that's the approved budget, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
It's not the year-to-date.
Yeah,
I mean, we haven't got the money in from July 31st taxes yet.
No, that's the approved budget. for
It's
this year,
it's
yeah.
last year's budget.
It's last year's approved budget,
Okay,
yeah.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, last year's approved budget, which we're building the rest of it off of. So, okay, so, expenses, salaries, 8%. Just so we're clear, that's a 4.5% COLA and merit. And then the remainder is 3.5%. And that's, equivalent of basically a 1.5 full-time equivalency. We're looking at a potential new position in fiscal year 26, 27, which we can speak about later, but I'm just gonna run through this. So, first, the other big one there, I'm just gonna, the 54.5% on 510 medical dental, we already know what that is. You guys are familiar with that, in the sense that it should have been closer to 467. You'll see in the far column under the notes. It really should have been 467,000 and not what was budgeted. It's actually more like an 8% increase. So we're familiar with that because that was my discretionary fund that we talked about before. Then we go down, we'll skip down, on most of the lines that are really library related, like that I play with, as opposed to my CAO and, you know, general increases in markets and stuff. We're not trying to increase any of the, you know, library specific lines. Adult youth programming, collection, all that stuff is zeroed. The marketing budget is the one area where I'm adding. You can see that there at 30%. Should go without saying, but I'm always pitching how great marketing is. It's actually one third of the strategic plan from our community and all that we've studied is dedicated to marketing. So we need to bump that marketing budget up a little bit. That's gonna help pay for the magazines and other priorities that are outlined in the strategic plan. So there's a little bit of a bump in marketing. Otherwise, it goes down, further down, and then we see a lot of drops in percentage in areas that we're able to do so. And again, we can speak to those. Telephone says 30% increase. That's mostly because we're finding this year our projection was too low and our month over month expenditures on telephone is actually gonna hit a closer target to what we're adding here. So that's why that's a bit different. And then on the last page, the second page there, so the copier's up a little bit, just so you know, we were paying, like, this current year budget, the 10,299, we're paying that to sort of keep up some copiers that we own, and they're like on their last leg, right, at the end of their life. So, but this new number is more for 5 years, it's a 4-year lease that we've gotten into, so you might notice it, in Spirit Lake are brand new copiers. So all the branches have new copiers, including 2 extra at Hayden and Post Falls for the district behind the scenes. So it's better copiers because they're brand new. Price is a little higher, but it's a lease and we were kind of just throwing money at bad copiers at the end of their life. So that's that slight change.
Quick question.
Yes.
Were the previous ones leased?
No, well, we own them, so we still have them. Yeah, and we have there are 2 or 3 of them that were some of the smaller libraries that still have good life in them, so we have them. And I think we'll deploy them and depending on how the district office thing works out and all that, but some of them were quite worthy of retirement. But there were a handful that had less runs of print runs on them because they came from smaller libraries. But yes, we did own those.
So how many you're buying
No, we leased
or
9.
leasing?
Yeah, 9.
Leasing 9 and we are retaining, we're increasing the number of copies.
No, the same number. We always had 1 at each branch, so that's 7. But we also had 1 behind the scenes at Hayden and behind the scenes at Post Falls that district would use, because we have district people both, right? So it's the same number. We just replaced them with, and we actually got a very good deal, and we're quite happy with the people we were working with, so. And again, we can jump into the weeds on any of this stuff. I'm just running down. The insurance. Insurance is going up, you see that 25% there. That's actually not necessarily true. The previous business managers placed the workers' comp insurance in the wrong place. They had it in the wrong place. So my new team, doing it right, they say, has put it in this spot. So it's not actually new money. It's just that the workers' comp insurance needs to be in this line and not in another line. So that's why that is that. Legal services, big jump there, so that's probably more reflective of what you've been paying. It's certainly something we can look at and assess as we move through the drafts. Just so that the postage, you see postage and you think postage, but you should be thinking interlibrary loan. About 9,000 of that goes to interlibrary loan. Sending materials back to the postage kind of thing. So again, that's something I can assess and look at that. And that's really going to be a balance between how much interlibrary loaning we're going to do versus collection development. And so that's something that has some flexibility. The external courier services, looks like there wasn't anything budgeted and we're adding it. That's kind of true. It's kind of not true, but basically it was when we were part of CIN, we paid for Orbis, which was a company that with NIC as sort of the hub where certain interlibrary loans to universities and things will go through that courier hub. And technically it was a wash when I presented a long time ago what will happen if we dissolve. And so that money would have been involved in the other lines that went to courier. So we bought it, like we have a van, we have an internal courier, right? It was meant to be a wash. So we're just placing it in the right spot now. It should actually be its own thing. And that's why it's kind of showing up as its own. It's not necessarily an increase in money, it's just that it had been part of CIN for part of that fiscal year or so. And then we just have those leases, and then the last thing there is training and travel conferences. That's getting in bump. Personally, I would love to see, that's going to be something I'm looking at year over year. I'd love to see that line a little bit higher. We have a staff of what, 60, 65 or something like that, and what is it, $7,000 to be able to send that number of people to a conference here or there? It's totally untenable. It's way too low. But not pitching for a lot right now, but this is just actually to accommodate the recent branch manager change we made where we're going to require the MLS. So it's in our policy already to support MLS work. So it's a little bit of a bump to accommodate some of that educational piece, which we're willing to support in our personnel manual. I think in the future, we're going to want to look at that line because of this, a lot of my staff, they're very interested in doing PD and they really look for free stuff, free webinars, free this, free that, which is great. But if you wanted to send the director to the International Federation of Library Association Conference in London in, 2027, you would need the money to do that.
It was canceled.
Yeah, I'm just saying, because I'm not gonna go to ALA, right? So gotta go somewhere. So, not that I would.
Nice time of year.
Just throwing that out there. But anyway, okay, so then that brings us to the end of that budget there. Total expenses, 6.445. Then we see the capital, that's CARF. We can come back to CARF, but you've already seen the CARF spreadsheet, which will be visited in subsequent drafts. But that's CARF. And then you have the operating, and then the expenses, and then you see the deficit. So we have a deficit of $645,080.96. And then we go back to the green shaded area, and that's where we have the funds that are available. And not unlike the many conversations we had with ICRIM, where I talked about milking ICRIM for the benefit of subsidizing the $255,000 on collections, right? Same principles being applied here. So we have ICRIM funding, CARF funds, trust bequest funds, and benefit funds. So ICRIM, we're very familiar with that. And then CARF is a static number. That's not a number that we would fluctuate. It's based on our CARF approval. And then same with the benefits funding. That's my 159 discretionary. That's not going to change. But the trust bequest, how much we use of the trust bequest funding is also down here. So I will say though, I think you have an error. So in the final column that we're looking at, the budget 26-27, those numbers are wrong. But we're supposed to be doing the 2%. So you just have to look over to the middle column, the 2% column, where ICRIP is 100 grand, CARP is 284, trust is 102, and benefits is 159. Those are the right numbers to zero out the budget. So that's it in a nutshell. It's basically a very straightforward budget. The things that are being increased, easy for us to justify, whether it's a regular percentage increases. But the bottom line is we're going to be making use of our other available funds. So ICRIP is going only to collections. CARF is only going to the things you guys approved in the CARF fiscal year 27. And then the benefits funds is only going to the benefits line. And then the trust and bequest funds to the tune of 102,080 is only being used for the appropriate trust that it's for. So we have a trust for Pinehurst, we have a trust for Post Falls, and we have a trust for Hayden. And we will use those funds to pay for things in those branches within this budget. So there, that's the first draft, probably a lot of questions, but I thought it would just be easy to run through it and open up
Does
for.
anyone want to make a motion to approve next year's? All right, Trustee Fox.
So just so that I understand, if you go up to, collection 610, physical 255,000, you're going to fund 100,000 of that by robbing from iCrimp as opposed to iCrimp for additional books. Anyway, the funding for that comes from iCrimp, which was my problem last year. I don't think we really did it, but I want iCrimp money to go to get more books than just our,
Yes,
so.
I understand. I remember these conversations. I will say that to date, in this fiscal year, we haven't used iCrimp yet.
Right.
So this is, I think we'll unpack this better for the next draft, right? There was a lot just went into make it this way it is, but I want to sit down with the CAO and finance specialist and really look at how this works, because right now we've reached what? We have how many months left? 6 months left, or like we're halfway through and we haven't touched iCrimp yet, right? So there'll come a point where we'll have to dip into it. I understand your point. If you want to give us 3% and then reduce how much iCrimp we need, right, or, in order to put all of iCrimp, because it's 208,000 of iCrimp, right? So we're only using 100,000 of the I think it says 225 at the top, but some of that's programming. I'm gonna guess it's about 208,000, because some of it was entitled, was meant for program.
I want to reduce programming.
Well, that's a different discussion,
And
yeah.
fully fund materials and get extra books with 100,000.
No, that,
Instead of taking iCrimp.
I didn't mean to confuse you there.
Okay.
I don't have the freedom to change the delineation of iCrimp. The 18,000, that's actually in iCrimp, we're supposed to replace program material with that amount of money. That's part of the insurance claim.
Okay.
It's just that it's all listed there because that's the total revenue, but the amount that we have for collections is about 208. Again, we can unpack this particular, I guess my goal here now would be to hear from the board what points you really want us to unpack and which are the triggers and what do you want to come next time with, right? And dive into, right? If there's some areas here that you don't care about, we're not gonna really struggle and try and make better improvements. If you're happy that we're 0%, right, -20, we're not gonna touch it. But if you're saying, hey, yours next draft, you need to come back with something a little bit more, amenable to this or that in a certain area. So, but again, we can revisit this question, but it's actually an important one because it's actually the same principle that we're using with the trust, right? We're using the available revenues or the available funds to pay for things on this budget. And in this case, iCrimp is just for books, CARP is just for what you agreed to on CARP, and the 159 benefits is just the benefits. So the one we're really using as sort of the main chess piece to move on the board is the trust fund money, where we have about 140,000 at Post Falls, 215,000 or so at Hayden, and then 100 something at Pinehurst. So these are dedicated to those libraries, which we're going to use for those libraries, but to whatever tune we need to based on the percentage you give us. Right? I'm presenting you what I want, right? And you can say, well, what you want, what's really important to you is to give us 1% so you can go back to your constituents and say, hey, we just did 1%. Fine. If you do that, I'm still going to do what I want to do. I'm just going to do it with these numbers at the bottom instead of those numbers at the bottom, right? If you want to give us 2, I can do it. If you want to give us 3, I can do it. So as long as we're okay with the concept here, which I think was the problem before, that you weren't okay with the concept.
That's right.
Right, so that would be something we could discuss.
So, next time maybe you can list, for example, CARF. I don't know off the top of my head, what it is we were going to pay for this year.
Yeah,
Is it 284,000, or are you just drawing 284,000 out of it to balance the budget?
no, this was so that's what I'm saying, like, that's not happening with CARP and that's not happening with the benefits. Those numbers are solid.
Where do you have CARF on here?
I don't, this is one I've given you this a couple times,
Oh,
and we looked at it during the facility meeting, and I'll bring it to the next one.
okay.
But if, just to remind you, it was the Hayden carpet, it was the Spirit Lake sidewalk, which I guess we could look at.
These are capital assets.
Yeah.
That are lined out for multiple years.
Yeah, all the way to 2037, I have it, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what those are.
Okay.
So there's really actually not that much to debate unless you're really stuck on the principle of it. ICRIM funding is for collections, CARP is for what we will agree upon, and the benefit discretionary is also locked in. The only thing that really is moving is the trust benefit, the trust request. Because that can be 158.9, it could be 102.08, or it could be 45.214, depending on what percentage you want to go with. It's not, in principle or in philosophy, it's not much different than what I did last time, so it looks a lot better, and the numbers are all right, because I have a team that, makes sure of that. But I'm not the finance guy, I'm the visionary, I'm the one thinking through what we're trying to accomplish, so,
Well, that's one more question. Doesn't the trust benefit request, didn't the people that gave that say it's for certain things at these libraries? Or, I mean, you can't just use that to have general operating expenses paid for at Pinehurst. You've got to use it to add on or
if
buy more bookshelves.
No, so I've been told, though, if the bequester did say, I'm gonna give you $150,000, which you must spend on audiobooks
Yeah,
at Pinehurst, then we would do that. And that's why I think it says up here that, confirm donor restrictions before use in the note, right? I'm pretty sure there isn't, I've looked at some of them, right? Where the Hayden one is, this is for Hayden. This is for Pinehurst,
okay.
this is for Post Falls, right? As opposed to ones which say this is for a room or new furniture, right? I don't think any of those are that. For the next draft, we'll be able to confirm that.
Okay.
But yes, we will be using it to operate those, so yeah, that's the gist of it.
Trustee Addison, did you have questions? I saw your.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, so last year you said, that if we got 5% over the next 3 years, we'd be set, so 2% last year, 2% this year, and 1% next year.
I'm not sure if that's true. What I said, what I showed, and I can bring it back, but what I showed is that over the next 5 years, you will eventually have to, now the numbers are all different. I got better numbers. Better people doing the numbers, so I got better numbers. But when I presented last time, I showed 5 years, and I was actually just showing the milking of ICRIM, and the idea that you'd probably have to give us 3% at one point in those 5 years. You could have gotten away with giving us a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 1 and a 2, or a 3 and a 2 and a 1 and a 2. Like I just showed it in a way where trying to give you a forewarning that, and that could all be moot now. Because things have changed, right? As far as the trust that we have and changes in different, the lines I was working with in that budget are the same as far as even the medical benefits and all that kind of stuff. So, but that's what I was doing at that point, was just trying to project how often, in order to stay, it was really focused on ICRIM. It was focused on the $255,000. Like $255,000 for books for this size is okay. I mean, it'd be great if we had 355, right? We had 305, but nobody really paid attention to the fact that 100,000 was being paid to CIN for overdrive. That's why I split out collection physical from collection electronic. So now it's dedicated 255, which was actually better than 355 for physical, but 100 of it was going, right? So it's not bad. We have 255 collection. It's not great. I mean, if you guys want to say, make that 355, okay, we can look at this, but then I'll be saying, well, 3% would be great, right? So depending on what priorities you guys have, right? 255 is fine, it's not great, right? We can always spend more money on books, right? But again, it's quality over quantity. I think many of us feel that it's what we're buying.
But you haven't yet. You're still holding back and buying ICRIM or CIN replacement books.
No, again, I have to go, I'd have to go back and see. I know that a lot of the previous collection development managers' focus was dealing with, thousands of requests, right? Which were coming out of that CIN dissolution where I basically gave the public, and especially homeschoolers, an email saying, hey, send us what you want, right? And so you're getting big lists of, right? So we were dealing with all that. That's a report, kind of unrelated to this, but definitely come back to that. But I'm just saying that the future of the CLN is to, especially in the children's section, we establish a great, nationwide recognized classic children, like the greatest.
Right.
Yeah, okay, so that's what we want. But, this is where you guys can go out and say, to someone who wants to give us a trust, right? Why don't you give us 155,000 and earmark it for that? Then I use it for that, right? I don't have that luxury right now. It's not like I have that kind of money just floating around. I do need to spend 255,000 on the general kind of purchases that any library of this size would have in each student range and each subject matter, right? With a focus in the children's collection to do certain things, absolutely, right? But some of this quest is also, it's a little bit unusual for public libraries because not everyone goes out and tries to find, 1950 pristine set of a certain children's, series. And that's different kind of purchasing. That's a whole other ballgame, which is what we want to do, right? Which would be great with project money. In the meantime, it's kind of like a project on the side, like we're doing this as we go, right? So that being said, I think it would be easier for me to speak more about ICRIM when I can sit down with my team and really analyze this projected year end, right? And see how much of ICRIM we're going to dip into, this year, because I'm all in favor of using all of ICRIM in fiscal year 27, right? Not to subsidize the 255, right? But because there's 200, we can subsidize 100,000 of the 255 and the other 100,000 above the 255. For sure, you could do that.
You're asking my questions? You have any questions? I don't, hold up a minute, but we can't drill down too much into this now because we're up to time constraints here. I don't have any other, first for me, I can only say what personal, but I want to look this over more. I spent a little more time on trying to decide who's going to fill the chair than I did on the budget, to be honest with you. Hopefully the right decision. And I think if I understand your question correctly is there anything major we want the director and staff to bring back as a new version of some sort or to answer something that we need that would help us make decisions again in the next meeting? Because my goal is not to have a special meeting until we're really pushed against the wall towards the time to finish the budget. I think we don't have to do that, but
Yeah,
is that what we want to do now? Is what else do we want from you to give to us to make decisions or to feel us out a little more the next one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair that, you only receive this, Tuesday or whatever. So I would say, look at it. I've said my piece, kind of some of the details. I would suggest that, individual board members make appointments, with the CAO, myself, finance specialist, we sit down together and individually say, hey, these are my talking points. This is what I'm worried about, right? And because we have a month, right, till the next draft. So I would say if it's anything on there, I think the individual meeting is a great method for us to get the feedback that we need, right, to rework for the second budget. So I think we waste time to try and think, process, and create questions now. But I just wanted to introduce it. I think it's very clear as far as what the green sections mean, what the revenues mean, what the expenses mean. There's some notes there. If you just go back and revisit CARF, right, we have some slight changes to it, so I can send that out, but it's not that different than as far as the number goes as what you've seen before. So I would suggest that would be my preferred method, where you individually, make appointments and we can chit chat and as we work to draft the second one.
Any additional discussion on the budget? Yes, Mr. Claus.
What I see missing is growth. And I know it's probably too early to get that from the assessor, but can we make kind of an estimate, put that in there? I'd like to.
Yeah, so as it is right now, and you're right, in one sense it's not there, but GL 400 is a collapsed. It's collapsed all the 400, there's like a 401, 402, there's all the different property, all the different taxes, right? So, okay, so the year, or the 5.686604 of this current year, that is the total number, which included growth
From last
from last year. So you're right, when I say give us 1%, 2%, and 3%, and we look at those new numbers, 5.74, 5.8, 5.85, that's not taking into account growth. And in the sense that it's 1% of the previous year's total, or 2% of the previous year's total. So I think I do intend for the second draft to break out what your 1% would mean
Well, what I
versus growth.
What I would like to see is you get something from the county, a pre-estimate or something, because there's always a line for growth.
No,
And
absolutely.
it's
Well,
not there now.
you're absolutely right. We'll have the line for growth. Last year, I think the estimate was 90, it ended up being like 120. So, yes, yeah. I don't know if they have the estimate yet. I mean,
Probably not.
They work pretty, close to the wire.
All right, so
So,
can we agree then that people have more questions, want to learn more? We're gonna meet with either the director or the chief administrative officer. The board's permission, please go ahead.
Preferably, if you could, please, schedule an appointment to give me at least a week prior to having to get the board packet and the spreadsheet put together. So I have time to really sit and hear what you're asking and get you what you are needing.
Okay, very good. We'll now move on to agenda item number 14, trustee training. I assume that's coming from council. In fact, that must be because we got a lot of handouts.
You have a Crookshanks versus Elizabeth School District. This is a case out of Colorado. It's a removal and a First Amendment right to receive case. And this one's interesting because the original district court judge's order was signed March 19, and then the defendant district appealed several different issues to the 10th Circuit. And then while it was pending in the 10th Circuit, in the meantime, the 5th Circuit case had been decided on the Llano County case, which wasn't in any of the briefings. But on January 20 of this year, the district filed a motion to dismiss the case. And part of that dismissal, they agreed to pay all the attorney fees for the plaintiffs, which was some advocacy groups and some students represented by parents and a group of authors. This 10th Circuit case, what's interesting about it, not necessarily the legal theory behind whether the removal procedure was lawful or not, because that's still in dispute. And we won't know until we get the circuit split up into the Supreme Court. The district argued the government speech angle, and the plaintiffs argued that both the students had a right to receive information and also that the authors had a right to express that information to the students at the school. And then the parents had a right to be able to have their children look at books that were in the library at the time. What's interesting about this case, and make sure I have the right one yet, March 19th, is the under background on page 2, you'll see that the district created what they call a sensitive list. And that list was created to place books that were essentially challenged, but they didn't have an option as part of that procedure to return the book back to the library. So they could either move it or get rid of it, but there was no option to put it back into the library. So I thought that was one interesting thing that distinguishes their policy from your policy on your relocation and removal. And that's on page 3 at the bottom of the first paragraph. There was no option on the form to return the books to school libraries and leave them off the sensitive list. But there was, this book should be returned to the library and listed on the sensitive topic list, or 2, this book should be removed from the library collection. So I thought the court thought that was significant in terms of how essentially the reconsideration process worked. But what's really interesting about this case is like a lot of the other ones, we're on a preliminary injunction, and so something happens, people who use the library go, no, we want to use these books quickly, so they file a complaint and they go ask the court for immediate relief. Return the books to the shelves, right? That's essentially where we're at in this procedural posture. And the defendants, the district, was fairly severely criticized by the court. At its core, this is a quote, many of the district's objections to the evidence that was presented during the preliminary injunction lack any legal basis, and the court does not anticipate the district raising similarly meritless objections in the future. So it's kind of like, please don't do that. And they go on to describe how calling these emails between the board members and staff, they were saying it's hearsay, you can't admit it. And this district court said, well, one, in a preliminary injunction, it's not meant to be like a trial. So we're really relaxed on what type of evidence rules are going to apply. And they go so far as to even say the rules of evidence don't apply in the preliminary injunction scenario. And the Ninth Circuit has adopted that same standard. In fact, I did some history on this, and in the 80s, the Ninth Circuit was one of the first courts to say that hearsay is admissible. The court can consider hearsay in preliminary injunction. So that's, I'm saying what somebody else said, and then I'm trying to prove the truth of the matter I'm asserting. So Rochelle told me the light was red when that car went through the intersection. I'm offering that testimony about what I heard Rochelle say to prove the light was red, right? That's hearsay, because I'm trying to prove what the fact is based upon what somebody else said. If I was there, I could testify the light was red, but I can't say Rochelle said the light was red. So that's hearsay. However, even what the district in this case was objecting to was what we call party opponent statements. And so it's an exception from the hearsay rule. It's not actually even defined to be hearsay. And so that's the second part of this packet that I gave you here, which is just a little snippet of the 100+ pages of the federal rules of evidence and civil procedure. And it talks about definitions that apply to this article, exclusions from hearsay. And so this can be a brain buster. Hearsays, it can be tricky, but this walks through what hearsay is, what's excluded, what's accepted. And on page 2 at the very top, you'll see an opposing party statement. And this whole section begins that hearsay means a statement that, right? And then under C, and then under D, it says statements that are not hearsay, an opposing party statement. The statement is offered against an opposing party. So the plaintiffs were using district emails against them, and was made by the party in an individual or represented capacity. So like a board member emailing them as themselves. Is one, the party manifested that it adopted or believed to be true, was made by a person whom the party authorized to make a statement on the subject. So that could be administratively authorizing the chair to write a letter or something. We have the board. Was made by the party's agent or employee on a matter within the scope of that relationship and while it existed, or was made by the party's co-conspirator during and in furtherance of the conspiracy. And so the plaintiffs here got the relief they were seeking by using party opponent statements, even though it contained hearsay, and the court considered it. And then the 10th Circuit said that the arguments the district made were frivolous. And so, although this might be kind of a hyper-technical sort of trustee training today, it goes to sort of the heart of some of the advice that we give clients about, hey, maybe you shouldn't say stuff, right? Because it's a statement of a party opponent. And later on in the opinion, the district tries to come back and rehabilitate their witness and say, well, no, they didn't really mean that. That's not what they really thought. And the court pretty much entirely says, I'm not going to consider post-litigation statements. We don't care. And so it just goes to show you how critical, the messaging of around what the district's motivation behind taking an action is, because there's not a lot of arguments that lawyers can make on a defensive perspective to keep that out during a preliminary injunction. Now, it doesn't mean those statements necessarily would come into evidence in the trial, probably because it's still an exception. It's not hearsay because it's excluded from the definition. But that's how sort of loose those preliminary injunctions go. And here we've got an order from the district court before they even got into the merits of the case. Then the district appealed, and then the Fifth Circuit Court came out, and with that, I'm assuming they read it, then they decided to settle and pay the plaintiff's attorney fees. So I just thought this was fascinating because this was like kind of a mess that happened during the Idaho County case while it was going on. And we got that opinion after the district court's order, but prior to the appeal really occurring. And so I don't know if the district's counsel just said, hey, the writing's on the wall, let's cut our losses. This is 19 books and we've already racked up this much legal fees. Or if they looked at the Fifth Circuit case and said, you know, we haven't preserved those arguments here, this could be a little tough for us. I don't know what their thought process was here. But a lot of these cases turn on the preliminary injunction sort of procedural posture of the case. So I just thought this would be a good one to put your way, show you the federal rules of evidence, let you know in the Ninth Circuit they're not going to apply. I mean, we're probably a little more liberal in exerting that rule than the 10th Circuit would be. And opposing party statements are just one of an exclusion of that definition. And then even if it is hearsay, on Rule 803, there's exceptions to the rule against hearsay. And number 6 is records of a regularly conducted activity. We call this business records. So something a corporation or a government entity just does in the normal course of business. One example of this would be if you have like a risk manager that receives a complaint, there's an assault, there's some accident, and then admin immediately authorizes an investigation. Whatever that person goes and finds, that report's all discoverable. And then the other side is the board consults with general counsel orders an investigation to report to general counsel so that attorney can advise the board, though it's probably going to be privileged, probably confidential. There's mistakes you can make. And there's a reason why it may not at some point if there's no other way to get the facts right. So these, arcane may be too harsh of a word, but these are buried in a long document. Public records is one of them. And so part of what we do when we're being strategic about how we set things up is we say, hey, let's put the good out there where it's discoverable, where it's in the record, and can we minimize statements, records, things like that to where, you know, we're not just going out and advertising dirty laundry. Not saying we are, but a lot of the strategy in this case came directly out of that. And then it was sort of like the district crafted its own narrative that created its defeat in the preliminary injunction. And then they probably didn't have the will to see the remainder of the litigation through because they're going to answer to the taxpayers, and then they have big legal bills that they pay for their one and the other. So fascinating case, fascinating timing in the 10th Circuit, right along with the 5th Circuit, indicates the 10th Circuit's going to continue to go down. The government speech doesn't apply, but you do have a First Amendment right to receive information. And so we're gaining steam on this circuit split to the Supreme Court. Hopefully we'll get that soon. And that will conclude trustee training for this week.
Any questions for council?
Trustee Austin. Two. One is there any lessons that you're strongly telling or suggesting that we should change what we're doing? And the second is, are we getting any closer to going to the Supreme Court with Mono County or any of the others?
I guess the main thing would be the consistent theme where the courts really like to pull this PICO language and say that, I mean, in this case, what the court pulled out was, quote, the court also held that the district's book removal decision was not, and this is on page 4, first paragraph, reasonably related to legitimate pedagogical concerns, because this is a school, so they were arguing they have a lot of discretion, not only under, you know, what books they choose to read or buy or get rid of, but also that it has to do with teaching students. So they have a big sphere there too. and explaining that other than pretextual declarations, at this stage, there simply is no reason to believe that the books were removed because of vulgarity, age, inappropriateness, or for legitimate pedagogical concerns. The board's only email strongly suggests that the book removal was motivated by the director's, quote, commitment to conservative values. So they're pulling PICO, even the plurality decision, to stand behind the proposition that an animus towards a viewpoint is always impermissible. So that's the First Amendment right to receive information side. So they're doubling down on the holding in PICO and the rationale.
The Supreme
The
Court.
plurality, yeah. And no, I mean, every day marches on, but it's hard to predict what case the court's gonna take up. I think they're gonna let it simmer for a bit and get another couple of circuits that will come out and have a case directly on point. Because we're already in a circuit split, but we're not like a big circuit split yet. We're just getting there. So I think another, at least one or two circuits are gonna need to answer that specific question, and then there will be a case that goes up. And they're trying to push it in Idaho too, so maybe the Labrador case will be the Ninth Circuit one that might get us there.
Okay, thank you, counsel. I have a question for the board for a minute. Would you be okay with us flip-flopping the last two items on here? And go ahead and do the response to public comment now, and then go into executive session. That way, if people want to leave, they can, or they can come back, whatever, but I don't think response to the comment should take long. And we can go back and do executive session after that. Are you okay with that? Yes, okay, very good. All right, we'll switch it around. I think 50+ did indicate he has a response to public comment to make.
Yes. This is in regards to the last meeting, a number of speakers that talked about our, at that time it was proposed on the agenda resolution for traditional families. I wanted to give feedback to them that I consider every one of them, I think there was like 5 of them, were quoting national statistics on, or nationwide statistics on makeup of different types of groups, not Kootenai County. We're addressing Kootenai County, so a lot of those comments were just plain old inapplicable. And I would say we know this because the director has data on what books were being borrowed from CIN that CLN didn't have at the time. And we know a lot of those books were family children's books, things like Laura Wilder. Anyway, Little House on the Prairie. They weren't LGBT or some of these other oddball groups that were being quoted. So that's really my comment. We have data. We know what Kootenai County CLN patrons wanted or want, and we're not going by nationwide data.
Okay, others responsible to comment? I have one. I like to talk. Not really. This is kind of a combination of input that came in via email, so I'll read you what I wrote up here. It was encouraging to receive several emails from the public to the board and the staff, thanking everyone for listening to the community while attempting to make CLN libraries everything it can be. There was a compliment for the board for the hard work and determination, and the director, the staff, and the board for promoting literacy and a love of learning. Again, this is a combination of different emails we got. Everyone is being recognized for doing their best possible stuff regarding Idaho law, and while dealing with adversity as well, we're also trying to not compromise on our integrity. We received several compliments for doing our best to support honoring the Traditional Family Values Month through our recent resolution. it was good to hear how the public recognized the benefits of raising children in a God honoring way. And what a nurturing mother coupled with the stability a father brings to a family. The output of which creates and maintains a stable and a healthy community. So we're pleased to continue sharing the resolution and other actions of the board on the CLN's website, where we have an area in there called the accomplishments section. It's another board. So we thank I do anyway, the public for several emails we got in supporting what we're doing. And so that was good. And I don't think we had, I don't remember any negative ones. So that's very positive, I guess. So I guess we now need someone to make a motion as we go on to executive session to put us into executive session. Steve Larson.
I move to go into executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 74206 1C and F.
It has been moved to go into executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 74-206 1C and F. Well, this is a roll call vote. All those in favor, starting with Trustee Toss.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes, aye.
Aye.
All right.
And
Ayes have it.
one over here.
You a new
Pardon
one.
me? Oh, I'm sorry. That was not intentional.
Aye.
Okay, very good. The last should be correct. Thank you. We don't have one executive session. And we're gonna talk about the new trustee. Right. Back in session, following the executive session on item number 15 on the agenda. Motion on that then, I guess? Go. Yeah. Right. No, let's make a motion on this, right, Tim?
You can look for a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that the board authorize the chair, the director, and council to proceed as directed. All those, at least, that's not always good. So all those in favor? All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. The motion is approved.
It's unanimous.
It's unanimous, yes, correct, sorry, it's unanimous, all right. Going down to, we skipped down on, since we did the public comment already, to discussion on future agenda requests. Anybody have any particular thing we need to bring out? No, very good. Yeah, Trustee Potts.
I don't know if it's on your list already, but we were going to review the financial management policy. We did some, but maybe the
Yeah, I think that was still
is it on the list?
It's on the list and it's still, they were gonna be working on that. I think we decided to wait until they update the financial manager.
We did a minor update, but.
Yeah, the bigger one, but I think they were working on so many things. It's still on our agenda, you know, on our list of things to do.
It's on your parking.
Yes.
And one other,
Yes.
I'd like to review the decision that was made before I came on board for the fine-free library.
What?
It's in here on this, that we're a fine-free library, so there's no risk for not turning in overdue books.
Oh, well, I agree. Okay, that was.
I don't know where that, if it's a
yeah.
policy or what it is.
Right, yeah, I agree. Okay, I understand. So the idea was we want to question whether or not we should not have fines, which is what the case is
Or
now.
if it's a policy, I
yeah,
want to review
I
it.
don't, I agree. I don't agree with what you said, but I see what you're saying. So we're gonna explore and see if we have a policy that covers, we're not doing fines for overdue books.
Somebody decided that somewhere.
Yeah.
Cummings.
You were on the board?
No, it was before I was on. board.
Oh, okay.
Okay, anything else? No, okay, so let's say that the director's choice in ties was very cheerful. I like those flowers over there, it's very nice. Okay, and the next, these, we're now setting next special regular meeting, next meeting date is on June 6th and 18th, I'm sorry, in Pinehurst at 2 o'clock.
I will be absent.
Okay, are you calling in or not gonna be there?
I will be out.
Okay. Very good, okay.
Well, maybe I can call in.
Are you? Okay. All right. What's the adjournment? This thing about adjournment?
It's on the back. 19.
I can't find it. You can never adjourn. Oh, there it is on very top. 19. Okay, well, I can entertain a motion to, adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
If they move to adjourn, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, right, the ayes have it. Done. Thank you very much, everyone. We are here, I adjourn.